So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Was Vampire King? So let's start the series. 500 years ago, the first vampire was born. His dark lustrous eyes loomed over the dark village of Konoha. He licked his lips with his long tongue, taking pleasure in the taste they left him, the taste of blood. He savored the taste. He lived for it. He chuckled. Tonight would be the night he sired his first vampires, his children, his subordinates, whichever they were, the same to him. His body was shaking with absolute madness and excitement. Oh yes, he was one of a kind. However, now would be the time when he began his revolution, his revenge against Konoha and its leaders for even trying to lock him up in that dark blasted dungeon. They considered him a freak, an inhumane object capable of world destruction, when all he wanted is acceptance for what he really was. But no, they planned to lock him there for eternity, swearing that one day, when they found a way, they would destroy him, so that his evil will never reach out toward others. A pinch, a bite, a slice here and there, and they think you're going to destroy the world. He could laugh. So they cursed him. He would never be able to accomplish his goals, and he would pay for everything he has done. Fools. They believed a few crosses and seals could contain his power? No, he broke out of that cursed place with ease and ran toward the hills, hiding, until he could finally commence his plan. And now, merely a year later, he has done it. He has found the perfect revenge, a plan that would take over a century to complete, a complete domination of his kind, and first to go was Konoha, the only place that actually knew his true power. Oh yes, Orochimaru, king of vampires, will have his revenge. He would be around for a long, long time. Konoha has an eternity of suffering ahead of it. He swore it, and now, it's going to begin. A decade later, the moon shone, the stars shined, and Orochimaru stalked around Konoha with a large frown on his face. Undetected, he shook his head. This town sucks. He rubbed his chin annoyingly and stood at his place for a while, waiting for something good to come and entertain him. To his disappointment, nothing happened. Still paranoid though, he grinned. His sensitive ears picked up a noise. He listened closely. There were two people, armed with weapons. Now, he was interested. We got another one. That was close. I swear this job is tiring sometimes, one voice whispered. Dobe, quit complaining, a low, dark voice said. Orochimaru shivered. Oh, he liked these two, especially the one with the darker voice. We do this for a reason. Without us hunting vampires all the time, who the hell would protect his godforsaken town? No one. We are all they have. Naruto, the king of vampires, grinned. It looks like he has found himself two new victims, and vampire hunters at that. How ironic. His luck was beginning to turn around. He walked toward the voices. The two were lurched over a body. They seemed to be studying it intently. They didn't even notice his presence. Orochimaru chuckled slightly. Their heads snapped up and they turned around immediately with their weapons aimed directly at his forehead. Who the hell are you? The dark-haired one demanded. Orochimaru felt chills. These two were different. They were both, dare he say, beautiful? He just liked these two guys. One was slightly shorter, with brilliant blue eyes and interestingly, blonde hair. And then yes, the second one, he had dark hair and his sharp piercing eyes glared intently at him. He liked that before a kill. It was just a fetish. Nothing more. I'm not going to ask you again. Answer the question if you don't want a stake through your chest. Orochimaru smirked. These two gave him such amusement. I am Orochimaru, he said straightforward. The two looked at him as if he was crazy. Apparently they were caught off guard by his answer. They didn't lower their weapons. Damn it, would you just answer the question? For real this time? The blonde one asked. I am Orochimaru. Stubborn idiots. They just don't listen to him. Impossible. The guards would have spotted you already. You can't get into half the radius in this town. How the hell would you make it this far? Idiot, quit fooling around. The blonde one spoke again. He sighed. Orochimaru hated repeating himself. Apparently, their looks don't work within synchronization with their brains. Now, he was just getting annoyed. I won't repeat myself, you fools. It was already through half the night. He was hungry. Better make this meal quick, and scrap the siring idea. Enough, I'm tired of you two. Such a waste of good looks too. Orochimaru leapt into the air and landed behind them. He smirked and grabbed the blonde one's neck. Naruto! The dark-haired one yelped. Ah, so that was his name. Well, Naruto, now you die. A felt something plunge into his chest from behind. A stake, a silver one. Orochimaru's eyes widened slightly. He didn't even see the dark-haired boy move. He released Naruto and looked down. He smirked. You idiots. He pulled the stake out of his chest and licked his blood off of it. Old simple tricks won't work on me. He laughed out loud and licked his lips. The two guys seemed shocked. Orochimaru looked at the body on the ground. It was one of his children, bested too easily. And now he knew why. These two were different. They had speed, they had talent, they had looks. After all, the child they just slayed was a daughter of his. You killed my child, did you know that? He asked lowly. The two glared at him. She was one of the first, actually. He bent down and stroked her hair. You know, I'll need someone to replace her, and I think you two will work just fine. Never, you idiot. I don't care if you are Orochimaru. We would never become like you. The dark-haired one seethed. Orochimaru frowned slightly. He had yet to figure out his name. Sasuke, Naruto muttered. Orochimaru felt better. The idiot relieved his frustration for him. His name was Sasuke. And what a beautiful specimen he was. He was thrilled. Wait. He stiffened slightly. Wait a minute, Sasuke. Uchiha Sasuke? Orochimaru looked at the boy. He was wearing a silver chain around his neck, with the Uchiha fan on it. That was all the proof he needed. He was interested in him completely now. I didn't say you had a choice, Orochimaru said smirking. Uchiha Sasuke. The dark-haired boy's head snapped up. Too late. Orochimaru charged and disappeared. The two were helpless. They couldn't see him anywhere. Sasuke's eyes wandered around. A snap. Naruto. Run! It was too late for him. As soon as Naruto took a step, Orochimaru appeared behind him, held him down, and took his bite. Naruto's screams echoed throughout the village. Sasuke could barely react. He stood there, shocked. His knees wobbled slightly, but his body would not move. He could only watch as his friend get his life sucked out by this hideous creature. He was panicking. Before he knew it, Naruto's body was dumped before him. Sasuke kneeled down beside him. Naruto? He whispered disbelievingly. Naruto, wake up. He shook the other boy. No, he was gone. Taken away so easily. Away from him in one instant. All because of him. Orochimaru, come out you bastard. I'll chop you into pieces for what you've done. He yelled. Orochimaru grinned. Oh really, Sasuke-kun? His voice echoed. Uchiha Sasuke, you are obviously one of the survivors from the Uchiha clan, correct? What a good fight they put up. Sasuke glared. But he didn't know where Orochimaru was. He couldn't detect him. The vampire continued. I remember. I was there. Blood everywhere. It was beautiful, you know. Itachi, one of my children. Such a prodigy. How lovely it would be if I had both the Uchiha brothers in my army. Quit your rambling and show yourself. Sasuke yelled. Pfft, ahahaha. I saw it all, Sasuke. I sent Itachi to do it. That night, he slayed and drank the hell out of every single one of your dash. How do you know about me? He asked curiously yet painfully. The images never stopped haunting him. I'm Orochimaru. You don't believe me, Sasuke-kun? Orochimaru appeared suddenly in front of him, upside down, balancing on nothing and standing in midair. He stroked Sasuke's cheek. Don't feel so discouraged, Sasuke. I know where Itachi is. I can help you. The boy smacked his hand away. Stay the hell away from me. Sasuke grabbed his weapon and aimed it at him. It's no use and you know it. You mortals can never kill me. He smirked and snapped his fingers. Sasuke regarded him suspiciously. A hand came out of nowhere and wrapped over his mouth. He then pinned his arms behind his back, leaving his neck exposed. That a boy, Naruto, hold him down, nice and tight. Orochimaru approached him. I could feel your blood pulsing. He licked his lips. Sasuke could only watch. He struggled against his restraints, but it was no use. Naruto wasn't human anymore. His strength was too great. He couldn't react. He saw Orochimaru's smirking face and gaped in horror. The vampire bent down and plunged his fangs into his neck. He lost all feeling and fell unconscious. Orochimaru laughed loudly. Yes, he had finally found them. So simply two newborn vampires he would breed to become two of the most powerful. And to think, he found them on a peaceful night like this. 90 years later. It had been almost 1 century and the battle between man and vampire was beginning to rise. Orochimaru had struck Konoha first. However, he underestimated the town, whose defenses have increased. Vampire hunters were coming from all around, and since usually the king's vampires would feed in the village, a lot of them migrated there. It especially had been difficult without his top vampires, because with their help, the others probably won't have to deal with the hunters. Still, the king would not give up. despite the troubles that lie ahead of him just trying to conquer Konoha itself. If this town took this long to take over, who knows how long the other 4 hidden villages would take. However, Orochimaru has been seeing success. He had bred new, advanced vampires that took over 50 years to train and unleash them. That was 25 years longer than his former vampires. It had been worth it. After successfully implanting fear into the people of Konoha, and shaken the courage of its best vampire hunters, Orochimaru was just beginning to move on to the next village. But he didn't pull out all of his vampire henchmen. He left quite a few behind to remind Konoha that they were, after all, dealing with him, and he did promise an eternity of torment. So the suffering continued, and there was no one who could, or would oppose him. Somewhere, Naruto scratched his head irritably. Do vampires have fleas? He thought to himself. The blonde-haired vampire walked throughout the dark mansion, looking for any signs of his friends. Finding none, he continued down the long hallway until he reached their living area. If you considered them living, the 3, meaning Naruto, Neji and Shikamaru, were planning to feed that night. Naruto had nothing to do. He might as well wait. He yawned. It was almost 90 years ago that they escaped Orochimaru's clutches. He sat down reminiscing that moment. They were captured by the vampire and taken to his palace. Both Naruto and Sasuke fought the entire way, but they couldn't. The vampire was too strong, too powerful for them to fight against. Eventually, they went along with the vampire and later learned that indeed the old psycho really was Orochimaru. They were in denial before. He went even further by dubbing himself the King of Vampires, and the name fit him well. When they reached his lair, they met 2 other men captured by the vampire, Shikamaru and Neji. They too were unwillingly taken. The 4 formed alliances as well as friendship. Soon after that, they met their instructor, Hatake Kakashi. He was a man bred by Orochimaru, and one of the first sired by him. Apparently, Orochimaru favored the guy. They got close with their instructor, and he taught everyone, particularly Sasuke, everything they needed to know, from feeding, sleeping, to seduction skills. In 5 short years the 4 of them learned all they needed to know, and were well on their way to learning from Orochimaru himself. When that happened, he appointed Sasuke and Neji to be his right-hand men, and Naruto and Shikamaru to be his bodyguards. It seems that Orochimaru favored them as well, for reasons unknown. The king taught them a few of his tricks, from jutsus, to summonings to other certain things. That way, they could do things average vampires could not do. However, the 4 of them felt uneasy with the king's liking toward them. They usually tried to avoid him whenever they weren't training. Still, the rage and jealousy of the other vampires soon erupted and lashed out toward them. During the middle of the nights, sometimes, the others would ambush them, attempting to strike them down. But it was impossible. For some reason, the 4 of them could never be defeated. Then out of anger and frustration the jealous vampires began attacking not only them 4, but Orochimaru as well, and that was when all hell broke loose. They angered the old psycho. Anyone who crossed his path in an unrespectful manner was slain. Heck, anyone who spoke at the wrong time was killed. It was the most horrific sight they had ever witnessed. The king slaughtered every single one that opposed him. He drank their blood in front of the others. He sliced up their bodies, burned them on stakes, and throughout the whole ordeal, he was smiling. Some of their closest friends were victims of the king's rage, Chuji and Shino, to name a few. Naruto cringed. After that, the 4 of them decided to escape, and quickly, knowing that they wouldn't be able to tolerate the vampire anymore. His twisted ideals and his hellish ways were far too sinister for the young vampires to endure. Orochimaru was a sick man, and he was going to use them for something ominous. They knew that if they separated from him, they could train on their own will, they could control their own power, they wouldn't be turned into idiotic soldiers for his psychotic ordeals. It was decided. They would escape, near dawn, that way. If any vampire besides Orochimaru chased them, they would burn. As for them, if the sun arose it wouldn't affect them as much. They weren't Orochimaru's right-hand men for nothing. The king taught them a sun jutsu in order to survive certain situations like this. A few tricks here and there and they were settled. Exactly 1 month later, the 4 set out an hour before dawn arose. Not even halfway they were spotted. The 4 were forced to flee into the dark forest surrounding the palace. They easily bested the vampires that flew after them, that attempted to capture and return them. They continued on. But something wasn't right. It was far too easy. Just as they reached the borders, Orochimaru himself appeared. The sun was rising. They activated their jutsus and prepared to battle him. He laughed at them and attacked. You fools! The Vampire King charged. He flew at a rapid pace, first striking Shikamaru, and then Sasuke. Next came Neji and last was Naruto. The young vampire's powers were too far underdeveloped to actually fight him. And now, running wasn't even an option. Winds swept around them at such a swift pace they cut and burned. This was it. It was over. They were caught. And now dash. The winds increased, but didn't stop. That wasn't until a sudden screech from a surprised Orochimaru sounded. Kakashi appeared and cancelled the king's attack. You four, run! He commanded. They were all hesitant. They wouldn't allow their instructor to stay back and fight alone. They stubbornly shook their heads and would not accept his sacrifice. That didn't go as planned. You stubborn idiots! Kakashi glared at them. Using an unknown jutsu, he forced them out of the area. In an instant they were swept up and gone. The last thing they heard were Kakashi's screams of agony piercing through the air. It was later. They found themselves in a foreign land, surrounded by almost nothing. They remained silent for a moment, taking in the sudden rush of events and the loss that just occurred. Abandoning all hope and sorrow, they reached a vicinity unoccupied by any human being at all. It was a large mansion that seemed cozy enough, even though it looked like no one lived in the area. The mansion looked like it was occupied. They found out it was Kakashi's home. He left it to them, so it seemed. Their instructor had been looking for an opportunity to strike down the wicked king and allow them to escape, knowing their intentions. With such a place like this, and so far away too, no wonder their teacher was always late. Soon after that they figured out that the house was actually an entire different land. It wasn't near Konoha, or anywhere else. It was simply there, a place, a hideout. Not even a place Orochimaru could find if he used his vision to his full potential. They would make it their home, their hideout, until they could execute a plan to vanquish the vampire. They would not allow Kakashi's sacrifice, nor any of their comrades go in vain. They swore it. There was more to it than that. He couldn't recall all the details. It was beginning to frustrate him. But it was a long time ago. The details were all very vague. Not to mention, he has a short memory span. All that aside, they still haven't acted on their plan for revenge. For the moment, they felt that they should just hide away and act only when necessary and come out only to feed. They were extra cautious. Feeding only in towns obscured from the rest of the world. Sometimes, they wouldn't feed at all. It was all for good reason, to stay out of the spotlight, and out of Orochimaru's hawk-eye until they were strong enough to kill him, though. It felt more like running in fear more than anything. Naruto yawned. It was almost dawn and his teammates still didn't appear. He grumbled and walked back down the hallway and toward their bedchambers. The two pale forms were still asleep. Naruto growled. Apparently, they decided to sleep in and not feed for the night, and they forgot to tell him so. Bastards, he was hungry. But then again, he always was. They were almost a century old, and usually a vampire would have to feed every night until they were centuries old. But they were different. They, for some reason, didn't require feeding as often. Orochimaru wasn't stupid. The old bat actually knew what he was doing when he sired the four. He often rambled about how they would be all-powerful immortal beings that would rule the world by his side, and he could feel it too. He wasn't lying about their abilities, but that didn't appeal to them as such a good thing. Suddenly Naruto felt something prod his mind, something vaguely familiar and interesting. He rubbed his hands together. Sasuke was around, and he was having some fascinating thoughts floating around in his mind. He decided to prod further into the vampire's mind. A little bit more. Naruto chuckled. Abruptly, the thoughts were cut off. Oh crap, what do you think you're doing? Sasuke appeared in front of him looking extremely pissed off. He walked toward him slowly. Naruto, why don't you? Naruto winced. Get the fuck dash. Whatever he said after that, he couldn't register. Sasuke was suddenly in front of him. The vampire growled and punched him across the face, sending him into the room Neji and Shikamaru were currently residing in. The two vampires awoke unexpectedly. Hearing the crash, they glared irritably at the two. What the hell are you two doing? Neji asked angrily. Naruto picked himself up. Shikamaru, not caring about what was happening, went back to sleep muttering something about being troublesome. Sasuke stood above Naruto fuming. Naruto laughed nervously. Dobe, he glared at him. It looked like Sasuke wasn't in a privé mood tonight, or a joking mood, but then again he never really ever is in any mood rather than dark and negative. So Naruto decided to push some more buttons. So Sasuke, did you enjoy those ones? Personally I think you could have done much better trying to remember about your dash. Naruto started but was cut off. Niji clobbered him over the head. Naruto, would you shut up already? The vampire grumbled and went back to his coffin to rest. What the hell was that for? Naruto yelled, geez, it wasn't even my fault. You guys don't know how to have a little fun. Humph. Sasuke swiftly walked out of the room. Hey, where are you going? Sasuke, it's almost dawn. The other vampire flipped him off and kept walking. The guy hasn't slept for 3 whole days. What the hell could he be doing? Naruto started at his retreating back confusingly. Niji growled from his coffin, shut up. Ignoring Sasuke and Niji, Naruto decided to get some sleep also. He had invaded Sasuke's thoughts one too many times already, and he defiantly didn't want to feel the other vampire's rage again, even though he did almost every day anyway. Besides, he felt that his awakening was pointless. He snarled, tomorrow, they would feed and he would make sure of it. They deprived him of it tonight, and for some reason, he had an undeniable craving for the red substance. Tomorrow, he didn't know if he could hold back this craving any longer. Sasuke walked toward a private chamber in the house. Getting away from the others, he just liked to be alone with his thoughts without a certain blonde-haired dobe invading them. He walked out toward the garden area and sighed. This place was his domain, his place of peace. He allowed himself to relax a bit. He stood serenely in the sanctuary. Had it not been his, he wouldn't be able to enjoy this moment of bliss. None of his other roommates ever came out here, and they never knew he simply stayed out here when he disappeared. Right now, he could walk around without disturbance. Here, no one here would nag at him. No one could see him. He was, after all, hidden from the rest of the world. It was far too late in the night for any human being to be awake, and far too close to dawn for his friends to be walking around, though they could, if they wished. He closed his eyes and sat down on a fountain rail. The center of the fountain featured a weeping angel. It cast its shadow over him. It gave him closure. The statue resembled someone close to him, someone dear to him, and she was killed. Slaughtered by one of his kind. That was half the reason he always came out here, because it resembled his wife. He wanted to grieve and cry out to the world about his loss, but that wasn't his nature. It had been so long, he didn't even know what tears felt like. He had forgotten how to cry. Then again, he couldn't remember a time in his life where he cried, at all. Whenever he felt like this, nothing could help him, not even his angel. They were only married for a month. He could have stayed and protected her, like he said he would. He promised to give up his dangerous line of work, but being the stubborn person he is, he wouldn't. Even after they were married, she knew it, everyone knew it, and someone had to protect the village, and that was him. It was that night, he and Naruto went out. It was only for one night, and it was more like a farewell. After all, he had more important things to take care of. This would be the last time he would hunt another vampire. But still she begged him not to go. She asked him, clung to him, pleaded with him to stay the night with her. He couldn't do it. He would never admit it to anyone. But he enjoyed doing his work. He liked to slaughter these inhumane beasts. It was blunt, true, but he liked the thrill. She knew that. And yet she would go down on her knees and torment him like this? Yes, and he didn't listen to her. He swiftly walked out on her that night. To this day, he still regretted it. He didn't think that he would never see her again. And now, the only thing that came into his head when he thought of her were the tears cascading down her cheeks and how her expression held the image of an absolutely torn woman. He sometimes wondered if she knew that his fate was going to end like this. When his thoughts lingered, like so, images of her smiling face would appear and dance tauntingly around in his head in a crazy comforting way. Other times he remembered the nights of passion he shared with her. He would remember her intent expression, her cries of ecstasy, how she clung to him and how her small body fit so perfectly with his. Those always brought a grin or a smirk to his face, but Naruto would always be present at those times. He learned to read thoughts, put 2 and 2 together. Now you know why he hid him. However, whenever Sasuke entered his sanctuary, no one can reach it. No one, not even Naruto. It was his place, the only place to call his own, and the only one that would see it or disturb him in it would be his beloved and no one else. Luckily for him, a few months ago, he found her. He smiled. No, she wasn't an old wrinkly thing. As mentioned before, she was killed not long after he was sired by Orochimaru. The king sent one of his henchmen to dispose of her because she was a distraction. Whatever the reason, it made his concentration waver even farther, which is why Kakashi had to train him and more specifically than the others anyway. She was, to his pleasure, reborn into the world looking the same as she did before, beautiful, clumsy, charming to him yet uncaring toward others. She can certainly raise a few eyebrows. She was a vixen, a seductress to him and only him in her own ways, and in exactly 1 month, it would be her 21st birthday, meaning, they could be together again, at the same age they were married at. Fate had put them two together, and it was just doing its work by putting them together, again, like it was meant to be. It shot excitement through him. He would make her his own again. A large grin spread across his features. He could hardly wait. Next night, Naruto flew into a foreign village, along with Shikamaru and Neji. He was finally able to pull them out of their coffins and with him to feed. As they sat in the village, he noticed Neji was looking a little more pale than usual. Something wrong, Neji? He asked. The other vampire shook his head, and shrugged whatever it was off. He brushed past the other two and began his own hunt. Shikamaru and Naruto regarded him strangely. Naruto, let's just go. The guy's obviously got something up his ass tonight, Shikamaru said dully. Naruto watched his retreating back with curious eyes. Neji was walking into a darker part of the village and the houses looked like they stopped. Above that, though, was a large hill and atop of that an estate, probably where the Baron lived. Naruto's eyes widened. Was Neji planning to drink from the Baron's family? If that were the case, he would have to stop him. It was going to cause a scene. Naruto, not listening to Shikamaru, decided to run after the other vampire. Neji stopped, noticing their presence not far behind him. What are you guys doing? He asked angrily. What are you doing, Neji? This is the Baron's house. If you drink here tonight, the village will get suspicious, Naruto answered. Have you been feeding from this village, Naruto? Once or twice. But Neji cut him off. He punched him across the face. Naruto fell to the ground. What the hell was that for? He asked furiously. What's your problem anyway, Neji? Never mind, forget it. It's none of your business anyway. Oh really? Shikamaru chimed in. I think we should know. You had to hit Naruto for a reason. What was it? Neji remained silent, and Naruto picked himself off the floor. Shikamaru looked between the two thinking about the situation. His head snapped up. Wait a minute, Neji. Was this the village you lived in? Neji's eyes widened slightly. He looked away. Where'd you get that idea, Shikamaru? Naruto asked. Shikamaru pointed toward the sign in front of the Baron's house. Byakugan village, that's the name of your blood limit, isn't it, Neji? Shikamaru questioned. The other vampire simply nodded. You mean your eyes right? Naruto smirked. I thought it was a disorder or something. Naruto, you're looking for a beating, aren't you? Neji glared at him. Naruto grinned widely. But why are you here at the Baron's house, Neji? It's where I lived. You're part of the family? He nodded again. But why? Your relatives are most likely dead by now. Neji's fist clenched. Yes, they are. They're all dead. Naruto gave him a weird look. So, why are we here? Neji smirked. Revenge. Konoha village. She walked along the shadowy streets of the village. The night was unusually cold, but the stars shined and the moon was full. They illuminated her pale skin. A slight breeze flew through. She shuddered slightly. Her pink hair fluttered uncontrollably. Sakura, a voice whispered. She smiled slightly. She turned her head around searching for the owner of the voice. There. A dark figure appeared before her. Sakura, it whispered, tormented. The face was still hidden, but they approached her. She felt her back being pressed against a wooden fence. A hand rested beside her head and the figure's face was pressed closely to hers. It nuzzled her neck. She felt like she was losing herself. She closed her eyes. Sasuke-kun slipped out of her mouth. Sasuke's face appeared out of the shadows. He growled lowly and pressed his lips closer to her ear, whispering, Open your eyes. She opened her eyelids, revealing 2 large blue orbs. She smiled slightly. That was until Sasuke pulled away from her and slapped her hard across the face. Her eyes widened slightly. She grasped her cheek. Sasuke-kun? She asked softly, snapping out of her reverie. What the hell do you think you're doing, Ino? You've sunk to an ultimate low this time. He seethed at her. She couldn't answer. Ino was a vampire he met a few years ago. She was a good friend of Shikamaru's and would often hang around the 4 of them when they weren't around Orochimaru. She was infatuated with Sasuke, just like a lot of the other young vampire females. However, Ino would follow him almost everywhere, jump out of corners at him when he wasn't looking, and she even left Orochimaru's lair to follow him. She would show up at the mansion sometimes, but wherever else she went after that none of them knew, and here she was, again. Sasuke was angry. His eye was twitching and his fist clenched tightly. How did you know, Sasuke-kun? She asked meekly. Sakura doesn't have her memory back yet, she doesn't even know my name. Do you think I'm stupid? His tone wavered a little bit. Her eyes are green, not blue. I can remember her well, Ino. Don't you underestimate my senses. Ino shuddered slightly. She didn't like it when Sasuke was mad, especially when it was at her. Then why dash? Why did you dash? She was slightly hurt though. Why would Sasuke go ahead and infatuate her like that? All he had to do was say he knew it was her. Sasuke's glare intensified, but he remained silent. He didn't know it was her, which is partially why he's so angry. He only saw the back of her head, and jumped right in. He should have known better. Sakura wouldn't be walking around the village at this time. He let himself get carried away. He was getting impatient, and he knew it. But when he heard her whisper Sasuke-kun, he knew it couldn't be her. He didn't revive her memories yet. Sasuke-kun Ino whispered. Shut up, Ino, he growled. I don't have time right now. But Ino's lip trembled slightly. Sasuke, she was looking at the ground, crying no doubt. He began to walk away. Wait. She called out. He was getting irritated. What now? He didn't turn around. She was silent. He shook his head and growled. Leave me alone, Ino. He flew off away from her. When he was gone, Ino picked herself up. Anger flicked across her face. Her fists clenched. Her rage was boiling. Her tears were dry now. She would have him. No matter what, nothing could keep her away. Even his godforsaken wife. Even after he would sire his bride, Ino would be there. She'd make sure that she was around and make her his own. Her lust for him was very strong indeed. Meet Sakura. You stupid moron. You're pathetic. You can't do anything right. I don't even know why I bother with you. A crash sounded. You little wench. Sakura ran into her room and slammed the door. Where the hell do you think you're going? A female voice yelled from the other side of the door. Sakura was shaking and crying. She slipped down onto the floor and held her knees close to her chest. Right now, her life was hell. It started about 7 years ago. When her parents died, she moved in with her aunt and uncle, and her little cousin, Kokoro. Little did she know, her relatives were a lot different than she interpreted them to be. Her aunt was a temperamental woman, and her temper was always aimed at Sakura, while her uncle did no work and was a complete slob, which is why her aunt is so miserable and edgy, and yet, they were both extremely greedy. Her cousin Kokoro, who is 14, is a spoiled brat that hasn't exactly grown out of it yet. The little brat made it a task to make Sakura's life a lot worse than it already is, since Sakura was taking over. The door opened, and there was her aunt fuming angrily. You stupid little bitch. Her aunt screamed and grabbed her hair. She began to beat her with her large stick. Sakura cowered on the floor, covering her head to protect herself. Her aunt had no remorse. You're worthless. You know that? She tugged and pulled at her. Sakura was only supposed to prepare tea, but she accidentally tripped and spilt the hot liquid all over her arms and legs, and in the process she broke her aunt's teapot. Her arms and legs burnt. But right now, that wasn't a big concern. Ugh, you useless brat. Her aunt released her and stomped out of her room, slamming the door behind her. Sakura was sobbing now, but she tried to hold the tears back. She already had bruises from before, and now, they were only going to get larger. She felt pathetic, unable to stand up for herself, or have the courage to tell anyone about her problems at home. She was already a burden on them. She didn't want to be a burden on anyone else. After a few moments, Sakura picked herself off of the floor and dried her tears. She walked limply toward the other side of her cramped bedroom and took out a first aid kit. She began to bandage herself and fix up her minor burns. This was a normal process. After all, it had been happening to her for almost 7 years now. As she was bandaging herself, she heard a faint rustle of the leaves outside her window. She turned around and saw a familiar shadowy figure across the room. Her eyes twinkled in delight. Sakura. Sasuke stepped out of the shadows. He smirked. Niji stepped quietly into the Hyuga estate. Undetected, this place brought back so many memories. Even in the dark he could see everything, all the places he tripped, where he left his old toys, where his father sat before Niji! Naruto said loudly. Shikamaru wasn't too far behind and hit him over the head. Shut up, Naruto! Does it occur to you that there are people sleeping in this house? And you're the one that keeps worrying about causing a scene, Shikamaru grumbled. Suddenly, All three of their heads snapped up. They turned toward the darkened end of the hallway. Someone was there. And whoever it was, they were watching the trio. Their breathing was shallow, obviously aware that the vampires were suspicious. Niji turned around and walked slowly around. You two stay here. I'll see to it, he said. Instantly, the person tried running. Niji's eyes scanned the area. They hid in a broom closet. He rolled his eyes and opened the door. There was a cowering girl, 2 buns atop her head. She was shivering and her eyes were clenched shut. From what she was wearing, it looked like she was a mere maid in the house. He just stared at her. Where did she get the idea that he was Dash? Oh, he forgot. He was a vampire. He reached out and grabbed her neck. He was hungry. And if his memory served him right, the Hyugas had many servants. If one went missing, who would notice? Besides, serves her right for spying on them. She slowly opened her large brown eyes. They showed no fear whatsoever. Interesting. She went from fear to courage in a matter of seconds. He got curious. What do you think you're doing? He asked slowly. She looked away with an angry look. She wasn't answering. Oh, how he hated these kinds of meals. He gripped harder. She gagged slightly and attempted to kick him. Oh, now she's feisty. How annoying, he growled. Listen, bitch. Answer the question or I'll kill you here and now. And Dash, no, she ground out. Was it so hard? Why was he even bothering with this girl? He already knew what she was doing. He put her down and pressed her against the wall. He pressed his face into her neck, inhaling her scent. She had a pure scent. He found himself slightly attracted to it. Usually, he drank from whores. Ha ha, it was just easier, since they were out at night and no one knew who they were. And they all smelled dirty somehow. Okay, he's a neat freak. He's sniffing people. She kicked him and then pulled out a knife and stabbed him in the abdomen. Where did that come from? Niji pulled away from her. She was getting intoxicating, not to mention there was a knife embedded in him at the moment. He smirked and pulled it out. You're going to pay for that, he muttered, and I suppose if you got exposed to the outside world, you would know how to kill a vampire correctly. He waved the knife in front of her face. But, this village hardly knows about anything since its baron is a moron. I see you got the silver part down though. He smirked. Look closely. He stabbed the knife right through his chest there. That's where you hit them. Her eyes widened. She gasped in fear. Niji, you're getting careless. Either that, or your revenge is blinding you. Naruto and Shikamaru appeared behind him. Humph, what are you talking about, Naruto? Shikamaru asked. Niji, she thought we were robbers, not vampires. Did you forget that vampires hardly feed in this town? Thanks for blowing our cover. And you two were afraid I'd do it, Naruto sighed. Niji was slightly taken back. Oh shit, he was being careless. It's okay, he'll blame it on her. You're going to blame her, aren't you? Naruto asked. I thought you'd think of a better excuse than that. Did you forget I could read thoughts? Damn you, Naruto, Niji muttered. Meanwhile, the girl that was cowering on the floor attempted to escape. She crawled away slightly. But as soon as she got a few feet away, all three of them turned toward her. Tenten, Naruto said. Her eyes widened in surprise. How did he know her name? Oh yeah, he just said, look, he's not going to hurt you. He likes how you smell. Oddly enough, she gave a weird yet fearful look. We won't hurt you either. Naruto, Niji growled. You're getting soft, Shikamaru said. Just kill her. Damn it, you're all so troublesome. He walked toward her. If you guys aren't going to drink from this one, don't mind if I do. Niji grabbed his shoulder. No you won't, we have exactly 3 hours till dawn. And? It'll only take 15 minutes. She knows too much. Just let him. Niji, Naruto interrupted. No, I want to keep this one. They both gave him a weird look. Naruto felt his forehead. Are you feeling warm at all, Niji? Naruto asked in a very doctoral tone. Niji pulled his hand away. What the hell are you doing, Naruto? He snarled. What the hell are you doing, Niji? For God's sake, you want to keep immortal with us. Do you know what'll happen? We can't just do that. Take her unwillingly? Good God, what the hell are you thinking? Did her pure smell get to your head? Naruto almost yelled it out, but controlled himself. What's with you and sniffing people anyway? He scratched the back of his head. It's her boobs, isn't it? You drink from whores, no wonder. Shikamaru raised his eyebrow and looked at Niji. You're such a pervert, Naruto said and stuck his tongue out. Look who's talking. At least I don't invade Sasuke's dirty thoughts about his wife. Honestly, Naruto, do you have no shame? Shikamaru questioned. He glared at Naruto. Naruto glared back. Idiots, Niji grumbled. A small giggle escaped the girl's lips. Niji looked at her quizzically. She tried covering her mouth, but it was of no avail. She burst out laughing. The trio didn't know what to do. Naruto panicked. Shh! SHSHSHSHHHH. He ran over and covered her mouth. She was still laughing. Naruto, you're going to make her choke if you keep doing that, Shikamaru said matter-of-factly. What am I supposed to do? Damn it, shut up. Niji rolled his eyes. Move, Naruto, Niji instructed. The vampire did so. Niji stepped in front of her and she tried to stop her laughing, but failed. You guys, better not say anything, or I swear I'll kill you later, he warned. The two backed off slightly. Niji grasped her by the chin and looked deeply into her brown eyes. Tenten, he whispered softly, double-checking her name. He pulled her against him, his cold breath in her ear. She shivered and closed her eyes. She instantly stopped laughing. Tenten's body was acting on its own. Oh God, what's this feeling? She felt a deep sensation inside her. She was being seduced. No, she shut her eyes. You're being a distraction. Shut up, charming Niji. Charming, Naruto thought. She could feel Niji everywhere. He surrounded her, and the worst part is, she was enjoying this feeling. Her eyes traveled to his lips. His head moved down to nuzzle her neck. She whimpered. Tenten couldn't take it. She wanted him. She didn't care about who or what he was. This feeling was too great. She needed him. Here and now. She grasped him by the collar, pressed his mouth roughly against his. Wow, he's good, Shikamaru half growled. Then he noticed Niji wasn't pulling away. He was responding. Oh, Naruto nodded. Should we stop him? Harem them? He fumbled with his words. God, it was getting worse. Stay on task, Niji. Naruto said. Finally, Niji pulled away. This is wrong, all wrong. Niji thought furiously. It never turned out this way when he seduced his meals. She, however, was different. He wanted her. She was pure. She was also defiant, somewhat courageous, attractive, and easy to seduce. That task has been scrapped tonight, he said breathlessly. Don't tell me you're planning to make her your bride? You barely know the girl. Naruto yelled furiously. You're being reckless, Niji. Shikamaru and I didn't follow you here so you could find one. We came here to feed. So feed from any of the Hyuga members except for the Baron himself. He is mine to kill. He knocked Tenten out. I'm dealing with her. You're serious, aren't you? Shikamaru asked. He nodded. You're just going to let us feed from your clan members? The branch family lives in a completely different area, so there should be no problem. They both gave him blank stares. Never mind. I'm not feeding tonight. Going home to breed you a wife, eh? Naruto grinned ear to ear. Shut up, Naruto. And with that, Niji picked up Tenten and took off. Oh God, he's lost it. 2 whole sickening minutes with the girl and dash. Naruto, did you forget we haven't been around a female, an actual mortal female, for over 50 years? And we're still young? Shikamaru inquired. Young looking, Naruto corrected. I'm not interested. Shikamaru gave him a weird look. Are you gay? Happy? What does that mean? Are you implying something else? I'm straight, dolt. Naruto punched him. What the hell was that for? Shikamaru growled. Because Niji punched me. Shikamaru raised his eyebrow again. Konoha, Sakura, Sasuke came out from out of the shadows, his gaze on her. He instantly noticed her bandaged arms. His expression turned into one of concern. What happened? Are you all right? She smiled. I'm fine. I spilt some tea on myself, that's all, she replied. She didn't want to tell him the truth, because she wouldn't know how he'd react. She met this stranger a few months ago, when he saved her from some attackers that thought she was a vampire. She almost laughed. She was just pale, and a little slim. But Konoha became extremely paranoid over the past years. No one in their right mind walked outside at night anymore. But she never really gets to go anywhere. She snuck out, got caught by some vampire hunters. He came, saved her, and the rest is history. Almost. He was kind of odd at first. When he first saw her, she thought that he was going to kill her, just like he did to the vampire hunters. She saw his face, and had to admit, he was gorgeous. At least, if she was going to die, it was at the hands of some beautiful stranger. Instead, he did the opposite. For some reason he decided to help her get back home, escorting her almost. She could have sworn he had a smile on his face the whole time. But then again, it was dark. She didn't know what she was seeing. He never smiled around her at all. She felt uncomfortable at first, seeing as how this guy was a complete stranger. But at a closer glance, she felt as if she's known him her entire life. She felt attached to him, and deeply attracted. Who wouldn't be? So eventually the discomfort vanished, and then, she began to have horrible dreams. These nightmares haunted her, and then, she'd see him. It was strange, she was dreaming of her own death, how vampires came and slaughtered her. She just sat there and watched as it happened, and then he would come, he'd pick up her dead body and take her away. All fears dispersed then, and when she awoke, she'd see him kneeling at her bedside, like he was there the entire time. Whoever he was her only friend, or the only one that would listen to her pointless ramblings. He could tolerate her, he didn't even have to, he just came, almost every week, 4 or 5 times even. For what? She didn't know, she was just glad he came. How this guy came into her room was a complete mystery to her, but she paid no attention. She was obsessed with him, or infatuated, or whatever it was. She didn't mind, it scared her a little. But he was so different, not to mention handsome. She was falling, she shivered. He approached her, studying her red arms and legs. You're bandaging it wrong. He grabbed her arm roughly, and began fixing the bandage. You really don't have to do that, you know, she whispered. He glared at her. She tried pulling her arm back, but he pulled it out further. It was then he noticed the large bruises on her arm. His face darkened. Who did this to you? He rolled her sleeve up higher. Sakura gaped. He was getting onto her. He saw all her old bruises, but they were never this bad. He had been suspicious of her aunt and uncle, but he never pushed the subject. She never told him anything about it. After all, she still didn't even know the guy's name. The most she found out about him was that he was a vampire, which she thought was even more attractive. But whenever he was with her, he stayed all night. Didn't vampires have to feed every night? It was just confusing to her. Sakura, answer, who the hell did that to you? Lines look familiar? She pulled her arm away. I, she stammered. How was she going to explain this one? His glare intensified. She was keeping something from him, and he needed to know what it was. He was always watching her, and even more closely. Her relatives, they seemed normal enough, but what happened between them when he wasn't around? She was obviously thinking about her answer more closely. I got in a fight with Kokoro. Sakura, you're 21, she is 14. I'm sure you could kick her ass. Now, just answer the question. No more lies, he said in a lighter tone. I'm almost 21, remember? In about 29 days, I believe. I'm looking forward to it though. Sakura. Answer the goddamn question, he growled at her, his anger rising because she tried to change the subject. Sakura inwardly winced. He grabbed her wrist. Sakura. It was that blasted old bitch, wasn't it? His grip was hard and she wasn't strong enough to pull away. That hurts. He snarled. Sasuke hated it when she whined. He had a soft spot for it though, since he dealt with it for a long time. He let go of her and sighed. She wasn't going to answer, though his theory of where the bruises came from was probably true. She looked away. Sakura, he said in a much softer tone. Sakura, who did that to you? He stroked her cheek with his cold hand and raised her chin up so that she was looking at him. Her tongue was stuck to the roof of her mouth. She wanted to tell him so badly. She looked into his onyx eyes, unable to pull her gaze away. It was like he would see right through her. He saw everything. He could see everything. Her insides churned and then a tear fell down, one after another. Tears cascaded down her cheeks. He looked shocked at first, but then his expressionless face returned. She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face into his shoulder and sobbed. It took him a while to respond, but eventually he wrapped his arms around her small frame and stroked her hair, almost tenderly. She constantly surprised him with her reactions, something he wasn't quite used to yet. As she cried and as he held her, Sasuke's ears picked up heavy footsteps coming closer and closer. He needed to escape before he got caught here, or at least slip into the shadows for a moment. Sakura was still crying. He couldn't just leave her there. The footsteps were near the door now. Sakura, he nudged her. Sakura, get a hold of yourself. Someone's coming. She blinked dazedly. What? Her tears were still falling. Her cheeks were flushed and her hair clung to her face. It brought déjà vu to Sasuke when he saw her. Just like that night, he turned away and just then, the door opened. There stood her fuming aunt. He let himself get distracted. Her aunt's dark eyes instantly landed on him. Who the hell are you? Naruto stalked around the mansion, looking for his next meal. Shikamaru had already found his, and headed back. Naruto growled. This was a pain in his back. Someone had a knife against his back. He hadn't found a meal yet. Shikamaru thought he was gay. Could this night be any worse? Get out! A small frail voice yelled. He spun around and looked down. A violet-blue-haired girl was in front of him. Oh God, not now. He was hungry. Her eyes were the same as Niji's. Interesting. Up till now he hadn't seen anyone else around. Hinata! Get back! A man stepped in front of her. Get out of our house, demon! He waved a sword toward him. Naruto sighed. Vampire. I am a vampire. He was annoyed slightly. He hadn't had a meal in 2 days. These two will do just fine, I guess. Be careful. The girl named Hinata told the man. You be quiet and let your husband handle this. The man seethed back. Her husband, eh? Naruto smirked. Well, she was cute. And he was decent. They looked good. But there was a flaw. Naruto caught himself. He was checking them out, both man and woman. Was Shikamaru serious about the gay thing? He almost broke down. Almost. Listen, you two. I'm not in a joking mood tonight, so please, just make my job easier. He stepped closer to the two and grabbed the man's collar. Her husband dropped the sword he was holding as Naruto lifted him. She gasped, as he prepared to bite, but she got down before him and please. Don't hurt him. Naruto looked at her surprisingly. She looked awful cute kneeling there. Don't worry, little missy, it won't last long. I'll just take what I need from your husband and dash. Hinata stabbed him, right through the chest. Naruto gaped, and his face contorted almost as if he were in pain. His eyes rolled to the back of his head. Serves you right, monster. Hinata snarled and drove the sword deeper. Who the hell are you? Sakura's aunt questioned from the doorway. She let herself snap, but then she realized she had an image to maintain around others. Instantly, her facial expression went from angry to sweet. Sasuke didn't buy it. Sakura, do you want to introduce me to your friend? She ground out through clenched teeth. There was a problem. Sakura didn't even know his name. You two seem awfully charming together. Sakura looked away, and Sasuke's grip remained around her waist. He's a friend, auntie. We were just talking. Oh, her aunt raised an eyebrow. And how did he get in? Dear boy, you look so scrawny and pale. I, or anyone else for that matter, would have thought you were a vampire or some starving idiot Sakura found on the streets to be her friend. Dear, do forgive me. I'm blabbering. I would offer you something to eat. However, I feel rather uncomfortable offering food to strangers. She fanned herself and forced a dainty laugh. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Bitch, you didn't use the front door. And we didn't invite you into our home. You do know you're trespassing, dearie. Sasuke shrugged. Actually, ma'am. Oh, how he hated being polite. He gave a dainty fake half-smile to mock her. I'm Dash. I invited him. He's helping me with schoolwork. He's been here. He was just in the bathroom. Sakura pointed at her small bathroom in the corner. Sasuke glared at her. Oh, Sakura, well, you know better than to invite people into our house, without telling me or your uncle, her aunt said, fuming slightly, yet still carried a tight smile on her face. Mother! A shrill voice wailed. Kokoro ran up next to her mom with a cute smile. Sakura cringed. Here it comes. The 14-year-old's eyes immediately landed on Sasuke. Her eyes lit up, and she sucked her breath in, making herself seem skinnier and her stuffed breasts bigger. Sakura rolled her eyes. Kokoro giggled, obviously trying to get Sasuke's attention. She waved at Sasuke shyly. Sasuke looked away uncomfortably. Cousin Sakura, is this your friend? She asked sweetly. Sakura nodded. Well, hi. I'm Kokoro. Sasuke rolled his eyes. Slut. He hated Sakura's cousin. She was always around town. Another guy every few weeks. She was whiny and spoiled. Kokoro, now wouldn't be a good time, Sakura said softly. I'm talking with your mother. Both Kokoro and her aunt glared at her. The girl's anger was apparent in her eyes. Sasuke's arm tightened around Sakura's waist, which didn't go unnoticed by her aunt. Kokoro smiled and began conversation with her cousin. Oh, shut up. You hardly know anything, damn it. Just sput out, you little whore. Sakura snapped at Kokoro. While her aunt was distracted by their position, Kokoro and Sakura began to argue. Her aunt's anger increased tenfold in a matter of seconds. Before Sakura could do anything, her aunt pulled her out of Sasuke's arms by the hair and slapped her hard across the face. Despite his presence, her aunt hardly noticed Sasuke anymore. She couldn't even see straight from all the anger. Kokoro smiled from the doorway and glanced flirtatiously at Sasuke. Kokoro, go to your room, her mother commanded lowly. Kokoro closed Sakura's bedroom door with a large grin on her face. This was a weekly routine. Kokoro would come home, and if she didn't like what Sakura was doing or wanted what Sakura had, she would accuse her cousin of stupid things and get her aunt pissed off at her. Even if Sakura was 21, she was at a large disadvantage with the 14-year-old. Sakura! How dare you accuse your own cousin of being a whore? Do you think Kokoro would honestly do something like that? Huh! Her aunt tugged on her pink hair. Sakura winced. You're stupid. You know that? You can't do anything right, and Kokoro is 14. She knows better than you do. Quit being such a whiny bitch and make some use of yourself. Make yourself look decent so that some moron will get attracted to you and get married to you so you can butt the hell out of my life. At least the moron won't have to have sex with you because you're probably already pregnant from fucking every single guy in Konoha. You fucking wench. You make me sick, she screamed at the pink-haired girl. Sakura began to tear up. It wasn't even her fault. If a 14-year-old called you a slut when you were almost 10 years older than her, what would you do? Oh, now you're going to cry? Go on, you little baby, that's all you can do is cry. Her aunt continued. Sakura's tears began to fall now. I'll teach you, little bitch. Her aunt punched her, and attempted to hit her again, but forgot about Sasuke. He stopped her fist. Sasuke was angry, fuming, he could hardly see straight. This is what Sakura went through for the past 7 years. He glared at the old woman. I wouldn't do that if I were you, Sasuke seethed. The old woman glared at him. This doesn't concern you. Sakura's aunt attempted to pull her hand away. His grip was too strong. Let go already. Quit whining like a 2-year-old, you bitch. The woman gaped slightly. How dare you? You come uninvited like this, and you assume you can control me in my own house? With her free hand, she slapped Sasuke. Let me tell you something, boy. If you think you can take advantage of me, just like my lazy-ass excuse for a husband does, or this little bitch right here does, you've got it all wrong. Her aunt began to cry slightly. Her tone wavered. I have to deal with everything around here. I have no time to do anything for myself. Sasuke grabbed the woman by the neck. She shut her mouth immediately. That's what this is all about. Sasuke snarled. Quit taking it out on other people. Are you stupid? You're drowning in your own self-pity. He slammed her against the wall. Sakura's head snapped up, fear in her eyes. You critique others like you're better than them. You assume too much. Her aunt attempted to kick him. She was gagging. You were right to assume one thing though. I am a vampire, and tonight I'm going to make sure you see the hell you put Sakura through. Sasuke's eyes glowed red. He activated his Sharingan, the blood limit he discovered after Orochimaru sired him. Just like Naruto and his Kyuubi, that was what the vampires saw in them, their true abilities. He began to activate his Tsukuyami to bind her into the time illusion. However, he felt Sakura cling to his arm. Her aunt was passing out. Please, let go of her, she begged. He silently cursed his soft spot for her. Sakura, he tried to reason with her. What the hell, you'd think Sakura would want her aunt hung and burned for what she's been doing. He did anyway. It's not worth it. She looked away. He looked at her. But she I don't care, I'm used to it. He gave up, and dropped her gagging aunt onto the floor. Much like a rag doll, her aunt remained silent for the moment, glaring daggers at Sakura and Sasuke. She had yet to gain her voice back. She has no right. He forced her to look at him. She had a defiant look in her eyes. Awkward silence set between the two. Why you little bitch. Her aunt wheezed and slowly got up, holding her neck. Does this lady ever let anything rest? Sasuke thought. Immediately, he turned toward her. You little bitch, she repeated. The woman leapt out and attempted to hit and claw at Sakura. Sasuke stood in front of her holding the uncontrollable woman back. Sakura stayed behind him. Trying to avoid her aunt's attempts to hit her, she whimpered slightly. Sasuke was irritated. This old hag was going way too far with him. Usually he didn't even bother with a person like her. That wasn't until she stopped attempting to hit Sakura and clawed at his face. Drawing a little bit of blood in order for him to get out of the way, he glared at her, his fists clenched. Sasuke grabbed the old hag by the hair and threw her against the wall, receiving a small surprise yelp from Sakura and a scream from the woman. Sasuke grabbed her and forced her to stand up by the hair. You have no fucking shame, do you? He seethed. Sakura gasped and ran over, tugging on Sasuke's arm, trying to get him to let go. Please don't. It'll only cause problems. Shut up, Sakura. Stay put. He threw her off. Nothing could control him right now. His Sharingan eyes were blazing. Sakura was thrown onto the floor, fear in her eyes as she watched Sasuke. He directed his gaze at her aunt Yu. He let go of her hair, grabbed her neck, and sank his teeth in. Her aunt kicked and punched Sasuke. Her eyes were clenched shut. She screamed and panicked. However, Sasuke was reversing the order. Her blood went up to her neck. She was gagging on her own blood. Sakura could only watch in horror. Her eyes were wide open. She couldn't move. Her aunt eventually stopped moving. Her hands dropped to her sides. Sakura turned her gaze towards Sasuke, who was finishing up his meal. Her heartbeat almost stopped. She felt an overwhelming desire to have his fangs plunged into her throat, to have him drink from her. Her aunt was forgotten. She almost groaned in frustration. How it would feel if his fangs were there, licking and sucking. Sakura's breathing became shallow. She was burning with want. What's wrong with me? Sasuke finished his meal. At the corner of his eye he could see Sakura was having some difficulties watching, not her aunt's death, but him. He smirked and drew his fangs out, licking his lips. He dropped the now dead body onto the floor carelessly, and stepped over it. Returning to Sakura's side, he grasped her chin. So you like that, did you? He looked into her green eyes. She chocked. She didn't know how to react. She couldn't look at anything but him. He picked her up from the floor and put her onto the bed. Sasuke inhaled her scent slightly. It gave him chills. He missed that. He nuzzled her neck, pressing his lips lightly onto it. She shivered and leaned into him. Are you ever going to tell me who you are? She asked softly, with her eyes closed, taking pleasure in what he was doing to her. You already know who I am. He bit down slightly. She gasped. You'll know everything soon. He pulled away. Despite Sakura's protest, you're going to come with me. I'm taking you away from here. She gave him an awkward look, uncomfortable with the sudden rush. But your aunt is dead, and she's in your room. Who do you think they'll blame? Kokoro saw you too. She might blame the both of us. He shook his head. I'm going to kill her too. Sakura shook her head. Why? She didn't. She saw me, called you a slut, and I'm still hungry. Too bad. My uncle . I'll forget him. He's asleep and drunk. They'll think he killed them. Sakura wanted to object, but she felt neutral about this. He was rescuing her, and she didn't have a choice, did she? No. Sasuke walked out of her room. Sakura winced. She could hear Kokoro scream from the other side. Inwardly, she wanted to smile, but instead she cringed. She felt crazy. Sakura looked at her aunt's dead body on the floor. She was in disbelief. Was her aunt killed so easily? That blasted old fart that abused her for a whole 7 years. She was killed in a matter of seconds. Sakura studied the body curiously. She poked it slightly. Her face darkened and she realized she was weak. Too weak. She felt like crying again. Hinata drove the sword deeper. She growled. Naruto gasped, out of surprise, not out of pain. He pulled her sword out. It was her turn to gasp. Look, Missy, I am really not in the mood, Naruto said cheerfully. Yet he meant every word he was saying fully. He was angry. He wanted to feed. He needed to. And she just stabbed him. He shoved her out of the way roughly and grabbed her cowering husband. Hinata attempted to hit him, but Naruto blocked and grasped her hand. She attempted to attack with her free hand, but he grabbed that one too, and pinned her arms behind her back with a single hand. Stay put, he commanded lowly and plunged his fangs into the man's neck. Hinata was struggling, but Naruto just kept going. When he was done, he released the man and discarded his body. Sorry, lady, but Naruto began to apologize, but Hinata finally managed to snag her hands out of his and punched him. If she was going to die, she won't without a fight. She and her husband just came home from a trip to the hidden village of Wind. She has been to all the other hidden villages, so she knew what she was dealing with. She hated these beasts, this inhumane creatures of the night. She had no tolerance for them. Her reason? She was just the third generation. Her grandmother, her grandfather, her aunts were all killed by them. A once powerful branch family member named Niji was taken, and most likely slain by them. And then the blame had to be on someone, anyone. Hell broke loose in the Hyuga household, who once lived in Konoha, but only a few knew about the vampires. They didn't want history to repeat itself. They left the Leaf Village and came here, an isolated area further away from the village. That was around the time Niji lived. It was all because of the vampires. The head family and the branch family blamed each other, all because they weren't strong enough to protect him, or they were a failure to their ancestors. Little did they know, Niji also blames the head family for his own kidnapping, and for what he became. Naruto ducked Hinata's next punch. He knew what she was upset about. He could read it. So that is why. He now knew why Neji wanted revenge. He blamed the head family for everything. Interesting. Look, I'm not going to do anything to you, Naruto stated finally. Hinata didn't look convinced. She kept at it. He grabbed her wrist and forced her to stop. Oh, just quit it already. You stabbed me, isn't that enough? You killed my husband, she scowled. Naruto scratched the back of his head. Well, sorry about that, he shrugged. Saying sorry isn't going to bring him back. Naruto looked at her, reading her thoughts. You never wanted him anyway, he said. Hinata gasped in surprise. How did you dash? You pick up interesting abilities when you're a vampire, Naruto smiled. So don't act like you're all mad. You don't look like the type to be anyway. Hinata was now extremely surprised. This guy was weird. He was friendly, a friendly vampire. The guy just sucked all the blood out of her husband. She thought he was going to suck out all of her blood or something. I'm really sorry my kind did that to your family though. But it's not all of us. It's not my fault your family is messed up. She slapped him. Naruto didn't react. What do you know? Her voice got quiet. She was upset slightly at the fact that this vampire was different. And he invaded her privacy, and he knew everything. She felt shy again. Guess I deserve that. But whatever, lady. Naruto began to walk off. I'm done for the night. And yeah, Naruto didn't know what to do. This was awkward. Hinata was staring at the dead body. I'll take care of him. I doubt your family will miss him either. She stared at him. He was a hard-ass, huh? And he violated you a lot now, didn't he? Ah, you poor girl. Naruto muttered. He blinked. I'll be going now. He picked up the body and raised his eyebrow at her. Yes, I do regret killing and drinking out of them like this, but gotta live, you know? He was answering all of her questions, just reading her thoughts and answering everything. She was having fun. At least she didn't have to talk as much. Naruto smiled. Thanks for the nice meal, he said and took off. Hinata blinked. What the heck just happened? Let me go. Tenten struggled against her restraints. She finally had a good look at her kidnapper. He had the Byakugan eyes. Who is this guy? What are you going to do with me? She tried harder to escape, slightly cutting herself. Quit struggling because I'm not going to let you go, he growled. Why? So you could sniff me all day? She questioned with a slight hint of humor in her voice. Tenten raised an eyebrow. He had a such weird fetish. Humph, he glared at her. Sasuke stalked toward the mansion, Sakura in tow. He honestly didn't care how the others would react. More specifically, how Naruto would act. Sakura, on the other hand, was panicking. She was still trying to take in all the events of the night, and here she was going to go live with some vampire that she didn't even know the name of. What's going to happen to her now? Sasuke wasn't concerned with that. He was still deciding on whether to revive her memories now, or wait until she was actually 21. He liked the age, and it would only be a few more days. He entered the mansion, preparing for the onslaught of questions. Sakura hid behind him. Sasuke, Shikamaru muttered, glaring at him. What the hell did I do now? Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Shikamaru grabbed his collar. It looked funny though. Shikamaru was quite a bit shorter than Sasuke. Where the have you been? You left me alone with Naruto. Naruto, Sasuke. And then I had to tag along with Neji so he can bring home some bloody woman. Are you trying to put me through the second level of hell? Sasuke smirked and shrugged. Shikamaru growled. He had a thing against women. Sasuke was still standing there. Shikamaru blinked a couple of times. Did I just see pink? He released his collar. Sasuke, what the hell is that behind you? He tried looking behind the vampire. Unfortunately, he couldn't see anything because of his height. Sasuke still wouldn't move. That wasn't until a small sneeze sounded behind him. He turned around and looked at Sakura. Shikamaru decided to give up trying and went behind him instead. His eyes widened. He grabbed her by the arm. What the hell is this? He gaped at Sasuke. Don't tell me he got a bride too. Another bloody woman? Shikamaru glared at the dark-haired vampire expecting a good answer. Sasuke grabbed Sakura back. That would be Sakura, he replied calmly. She waved shyly. Shikamaru stepped back. Well, at least she was pretty, sort of. Don't let Ino see her, Sasuke shrugged. Is she useful? Shikamaru asked with a grin on his face. Sasuke glared at him and started walking toward his private chambers, dragging Sakura along. Shikamaru smacked himself in the forehead. 2, his eye twitched. 2 bloody women in the house, 3 if you count Ino. Next thing you know, Naruto's going to dash. Hey! Shikamaru, guess what? Naruto chimed in gleefully and smacked him on the shoulder. I met a girl, she's kind of weird, and she stabbed me, and slapped me, and punched me, but heck, she's a kind one. You think Shikamaru's glare silenced him. Shikamaru held his hand in front of his face, as if he were counting. That makes four bloody women in the house, he muttered mostly to himself. He looked distraught, with the way he said it. The number seemed evil. Naruto stared at him blankly. Shikamaru held up 4 fingers, for women. Naruto grinned. You really have to get over your phobia of women, Shikamaru. The vampire glared at the blonde. I don't have a phobia. Naruto stared at him. He stopped for a moment. That probing in his mind was coming back. He grinned. More of Sasuke's dirty thoughts. What is it, Naruto? Shikamaru asked curiously. Naruto rubbed his hands together evilly. Sasuke is dreaming about his wife again. Wife? That's who that pink-haired girl was. Naruto gave him a weird look. Yeah, how'd you know her hair was pink? Shikamaru waved at the air in front of him. She was right here. That woman was his wife. Since when did that Uchiha guy take interest in women, in that sort of way? Naruto smirked. That's another story. But you said she was here? Impossible. She was killed by Orochimaru's henchmen. Shikamaru raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? She was right here. He waved at the air again. Yes, I may not have a large memory, but that event was different. I won't forget it. If she was here though, she should be very old. Naruto placed a hand under his chin, his eyes narrow. She looked like she was in her 20s. Shikamaru crossed his arms. Realization hit the both of them. You don't suppose Sasuke learned a zombie jutsu? Naruto said grimly. Shikamaru nodded. Those idiots, Sasuke muttered. He forgot about them for the moment and looked at Sakura, who was currently deposited on the bed and glancing at everything around her. She touched the mattress, the pillows, and the sheets. Wow, this is a beautiful place, she murmured dreamily. He nodded, considering the circumstances they received the house in. It wasn't all that great. How did you guys get this place? He shrugged but remained silent. He should have asked Kakashi where he was living when he was alive or dead, whichever regret was looming over him. Sasuke. His head snapped up in surprise. That's your name, isn't it? She asked curiously. He looked away. Yeah. She smiled. Well, now I at least know a bit more. What are we going to do now? He gave her a weird stare. I mean, what can I do around here? I can help you guys clean up a bit, or something. You won't have to do anything around here yet, he added silently. She sighed. How long do you plan to let me stay here? He shrugged. Eternity. He couldn't help but smirk. Silence engulfed the two for a while. His eyes scanned her. Sasuke wanted nothing more than to rip off her clothes and take here and now. But he's a gentleman, sort of, to her anyway. He's going to have to wait until she was his bride again to do that. He growled in frustration. She was just too damn tempting, just sitting there, glancing at him at times, sighing. He approached her and grabbed her wrist, snarling. He needed to do something, anything to relieve this frustration. She winced slightly. Sasuke, what are you? He cut her off. His lips settled on her palm and traveled down to her wrist. He bit down slightly, drawing a little bit of blood. She gasped. It felt oddly good. She tried pulling her wrist back. He glared at her and licked the small amount of blood, taking in its sweet taste. Her taste, the taste he's been waiting for all these years. He couldn't stop. He wanted more. Sasuke, she said softly. He didn't pay attention. Sakura was starting to feel woozy and uncomfortable. Why wasn't she stopping him? She knew why inside she wanted him to. Why was the question she kept asking. She bit her lip. Sasuke didn't show any sign of stopping soon. What possessed him to start this? It was something more, an allegory of events she just couldn't understand. He was affecting her more than she could ever imagine. His eyes were clenched shut. He was taking in everything. He opened his eyes and looked straight into her. Through her, Sakura gave in. He moved to her neck. His cold breath caressed her skin, making goosebumps. She shivered and closed her eyes. He kissed it, nipping and sucking slightly. She moaned and leaned into him, taking pleasure in what he was doing. His lips traveled to her ear. She could hear his steady breathing. She could feel his breath. It felt so familiar. She wanted to explore it. She needed to. Sakura pulled Sasuke up so that his onyx eyes could meet with her green ones. He was breathing heavily. There was want and something else. Something that was meant only for her to see in his dark eyes. What was it? He glanced at her lips, which were a mere millimeter away. He leaned in slowly, a little closer, and She grabbed him and pressed her lips against his urgently, sending shockwaves through her. Sakura couldn't resist it. She quivered. This was what she needed. She wanted him. Now, he smirked into the kiss. Oh, how he missed the moments when she lost control. He was just about to deepen it, and then dash. Sakura-chan. The two broke apart abruptly. Sakura gasped slightly. A slight blush tainted her cheeks. He desperately wanted to plunge a knife into Naruto's throat for interrupting them. True, Sasuke and Sakura were close, but they never went this far. Sasuke was always under control, but the rush and the excitement of having her again was nagging at him. He was getting far too impatient for his own good. A few more days, Sasuke snarled. It was only a few more days. Naruto was still banging on the door. Sasuke opened it, glaring at the blonde vampire, his fists clenched. Naruto didn't pay attention. Instead he ran straight toward the bed. Inspecting Sakura, he blinked. Wow, Sasuke, I'm amazed. It almost looks like the real Sakura. Sakura raised an eyebrow. What the hell are you talking about, Naruto? Sasuke asked irritably. He better have a good reason for coming in here like this. You and your zombie mistress, you know, you're going to have ugly children. He responded out of the blue. Sakura gaped. She was offended. Did he just say I was ugly? She smacked the blonde over the head. Naruto grinned and rubbed his head. Hey, you even made its reactions right. He placed a hand under his chin. Sasuke growled. Naruto, she's not a zombie. Naruto poked her a couple of times. Are you sure? He gulped. Skin that soft couldn't belong to a zombie. That means, Sakura-chan, you look the same as you did when you were young. Sakura glared at him. Naruto reached out and grabbed Sakura into a large hug, laughing like a maniac. Now he's saying I'm old? How does this guy know me? She was fuming and gagging. One moment she was enjoying her blissful moment with Sasuke, and now all of that was ruined by some weirdo who thinks she's old and ugly. Naruto, let her go, Sasuke ground out, noticing that she began to change colors. Then that meant Naruto released her immediately and scratched the back of his head. I am not old. Sakura's tone wavered. You're a ghost? Naruto asked Sakura curiously. She sighed. Sasuke, who is this? She asked the dark-haired vampire. Sasuke snarled. He would be Naruto. He's an idiot, forgetful. Naruto glared at Sasuke and shook his head a few times. He looked at her straight into her eyes. Alzheimer's is kicking in already? Sasuke knocked him over the head. She's not old though. Sasuke repeated. Sakura growled. She had so many urges to hit this Naruto guy over the head. Naruto. His name came out as a whisper on her lips. That name sounded familiar and annoying to her at the same time. Her head began to pound slightly. She rubbed her temples. Both Naruto and Sasuke turned toward her. Sakura-chan? You, how dash. Naruto didn't know how to approach this subject. One of his best friends were back, and he was extremely glad. But why couldn't she remember him? There was no explanation. Sakura began to think on this subject. Everything was coming together. It was all so familiar, and yet so vague. She wanted to know so badly. Why can't she place it? It was on the tip of her tongue. She was reborn. Her head snapped up. She looked at Sasuke with a questioning gaze. Naruto did the same, but grinned. Well, Naruto hit Sasuke over the head. Why the hell didn't you say anything to any of us? Sasuke rolled his eyes. Sakura sighed. She lost her train of thought completely. What the hell is going on? Are you going to tell me who you are? Tenten was getting tired of trying to make conversation with this guy. He was just sitting there, looking at her, and probably waiting for a chance to sniff at her again. She cringed. Are you going to let me go? Niji remained silent. Quit ignoring me. She yelled in frustration. Why'd you bring me here anyway? He glared at her. Well, at least I got some sort of reaction, she sighed. Niji sat there staring at her. He was enjoying it. Her frustrated sighs, her pleas, her questions. He liked watching her, and yet, at the same time, he had the urge to plunge a knife through her chest and watch her blood flow. For the heck of it, she was getting to him. To his very nerve and core. She's only been here for 2 days and she's already affecting him in this way. He looked away. Something was different, and it wasn't her smell. That was a bonus. Tenten pulled at her restraints. She was angry. He could at least talk to her. What are you to the Hyugas anyway? He spoke. She looked up at him surprisingly. He was talking? What do you mean? She retorted. I mean, what use are you to those bloody bastards? He snarled. She blinked a couple of times. Isn't he a Hyuga member? Why is he speaking about his clan that way? Are you a mere servant? Or is the head family using you for some other reason? Why would you assume they're using me for something? She was curious now. You are different. Tenten raised an eyebrow. Different? That's the best answer he can come up with? She shrugged. Who are you really? He questioned. You keep me here for 2 days and you never asked me that question? His glare intensified. I'm Tenten. That much I know. I meant who the hell are you, really? He was losing his patience. She sighed. You mean my relation to the Hyugas? He nodded. Niji eyed her carefully. She was dressed as a maid. But something told him that wasn't it. First, tell me who you are, and why you seem to despise the Hyugas so much. Judging by your appearance, however, you are also a Hyuga member, are you not? If he wanted the answer, he'd have to trade. Niji nodded. I'm Hyuga Niji, he said lowly. Branch, I'm guessing from your previous answer, she confirmed. He nodded again. The head family dash. He didn't know how to go about with this subject. What was he supposed to say? He thought about his answer for a while. It's their fault, that dash. He couldn't say it. Tenten stared at him, and sensed his discomfort with the subject. She was a patient person. She could wait. Patient. Not nosy. She eyes him, expecting the answer. Niji was still silent. She wasn't going to get the answer anytime soon. She sighed. I'm not a maid in the household, she decided to start instead. I'm an assassin. He blinked a couple of times. That night, you guys appeared. I was supposed to carry out my task, but I was afraid I'd been caught. I just didn't expect to be caught by a vampire, she growled in frustration. And now, thanks to you, I don't get my reward money and I didn't even get to threaten my target. Niji felt kind of bad. He had gone too far that night. It's all her fault anyway. She shouldn't have kissed him. So, who was your target anyway? He asked slowly. She smirked. The Byakugan village baron, the head family's leader. His eyes widened in surprise. They had the same target? No, she would not deprive him of his revenge. Nice smelling and pure or not, he's not going to allow her to do that. Maybe he could use this to his advantage. She's tied up here. What can she do? Niji smirked. He won't be your concern anymore. Tenten scowled. Your turn. He stiffened. Shikamaru! A voice squeaked. He turned around slowly. What do you want, Ino? He asked her dully. She groaned and threw her arms around his neck, resting her head on his shoulder. Have you seen Sasuke-kun? She asked sweetly. He's busy. Oh? She sounded disappointed. Shika, she whined. This is the worst day of my life. If he pushes me away again, I swear I'll snap. She clenched his collar. He always pushes you away anyway, and I think you've already snapped. He pushed her hands off his collar. Ino was one of his good friends. After Chuji, how she was, he would never know. But he had a suspicion it had something to do with Sasuke and his relation to the dark-haired vampire. He didn't really mind having her around as much as the others, and that's why she would come to him. Usually, Chuji used to tease him about her all the time. He just didn't shrug her off, that's all. She was the only female he was fine around, though sometimes he would get jealous of Sasuke for all the attention he got from her. His thoughts were jumbled, and so were his emotions. Would it help if he said she was the last thing that came to his mind before he went to sleep? He told her that once, and she laughed, and Chuji patted him on the shoulder, a fake tear in his eye, and an apologetic look on his face, though inwardly, he was laughing. Ah, memories. Shikamaru, do you think I can stay here for a while? She asked casually. That was random. Why? He raised an eyebrow. I just don't have a place to stay for the moment. She laughed nervously. I know you better than that, Ino. You want to try and get Sasuke again. His eye twitched. He's not going to be interested. He has a wife. The words came out more like a growl. Ino grabbed his shirt. I promise I won't try. I just need a place to stay, that's it. Honest, she pouted, and looked at him with large teary blue orbs. The puppy dog look. She knew he couldn't resist it. Shikamaru shut his eyes tightly. You can't do it, you'll regret it. He was debating with himself, but he just couldn't leave her. Before he could reason with himself any further, he answered yes. Hinata sat silently in her room, pondering the events that occurred. It had been a few days ago since she met that strange blonde vampire in her home. She was intrigued. How could one, that's so murderous and vicious, be that caring? It scared her slightly. She was being rash, judging things like that. She shook her head, trying to get rid of the image. It was foolish to think of him any longer, yet she found her thought wandering toward it again, deciding to get some fresh air and away from the blonde invading her thoughts. She walked toward her window and opened it, letting the breeze flow in. She shivered, Her pearl eyes landed on the moon, gazing at its majestic beauty. It was a full moon. Without a second thought she climbed through the large window and onto the roof. Heaven looked like it was a step away from here she was at. She smiled slightly. Admiring the moon was like a hobby to her. It gave her calm, and it cleared her mind of any distraction. It was her escape. Niji sighed, half in relief and half in frustration. Since the night Tenten told him about her true intentions, she'd been questioning about his, claiming it was a free trade. He told her that she didn't have to tell him anything, in his own defense. But this Tenten girl was stubborn. For the next few days she continued asking him, until he got fed up with her and stormed out of the house, unconsciously, bumping into Naruto, Sasuke, and his wife, Sakura, along the way. It didn't surprise him much that Sasuke had his wife beside his side again. He just didn't think Sasuke would be stuck with a bright and bubbly person like her. He felt rather awkward about it. Seeing that Uchiha smiling, or half smiling all the time, made his blood, whatever's left of it, boil. How could he be concerned with such a thing? Niji saw everything in all of his friends, and Sasuke had a bone to pick with some man. He just couldn't figure out who. But up until he figured out the Uchiha had a wife, Sasuke had distanced himself with anything on revenge, for a little bit anyway, and focused on something completely different. It was obviously something Niji couldn't pick up right away. Whatever Sasuke was focusing on, he found himself focused the same way on his prisoner, love. He could laugh. It was probably a different attraction, lust. Now, he had no idea what to do with that woman. She'd ask questions, seek answers, and wouldn't stop until she found the answers she wanted. Persistence can be a bad thing, he growled. He was running, avoiding her, and he knew it. And now, he finally made it. He was in front of the Hyuga estate. Tonight would be the night he'd take his revenge, and with Tenten locked up, it was certain that he would be the one to kill the Baron. His body was shaking with anticipation. He walked through the house, knowing exactly where to go. His memory never failed him, and here he was, in front of the Baron's bedroom door. Niji smirked. The old fart had his leg over his wife's stomach, causing her to make a weird choking noise. He snored loudly too. How that woman could stand it, he would never know. He stared at the two curiously. They looked different. Heck, they didn't even look like Hyugas. What does that mean? His fists clenched. He reached out and grabbed the snoring man off of his wife by the neck, causing him to wake immediately. The man was slightly groggy. Niji shook him a bit. The man's eyes widened. Answer my question, old man. Who the hell are you? Niji seethed. He stuttered on his words. He couldn't react. Everything was so sudden. His wife stirred awake and blinked a couple of times. Honey, something wrong? Seeing the situation her husband was in, she began scream. Niji quickly released her husband, grabbed a nearby bed sheet and wrapped it around her mouth and neck to prevent her from screaming any further. She shook violently and thrashed around. You, shut up or I'll kill you and your husband here and now. He pulled the sheet even tighter. She gagged and began to cry. Stopping her actions immediately, Niji returned to deal with her husband. But during the time he spent gagging the Baron's wife, the old man managed to get a knife and waved it defensively in front of him. Let my wife go, you sick bastard, he commanded. Very noble of you, Niji stated flatly. His cool demeanor unaffected, he took a step toward the Baron. The old man gasped. Stay away. I'm warning you. He took a step back and tripped. Just answer the damn question and maybe I'll spare you. Who the hell are you? Niji questioned angrily. I'm the village Baron. He gulped. Beads of sweat began to trail down. No shit. I mean, why the hell isn't a Hyuga the Baron? Niji stepped closer and was almost nose to nose with the man, who whimpered pathetically. Niji's blank eyes remained on the cowering man, demanding an answer silently. Quickly the old man plunged the knife through Niji's chest. Take that. Niji sighed. He'd been here before, but with Tenten holding the knife, it was frustrating him. He neatly drew it out and licked the small amount of blood from it. The geezer sat there gaping in horror. Same with his wife. I'm really sick of people stabbing me. If you don't answer me, I'll kill you right now. The man whimpered. Okay. The Hyugas are all gone. They were murdered. Only a few of them survived. Please don't kill me, he begged. Too vague. Niji held the knife to the man's throat. Wait. I'll tell you more. Niji raised an eyebrow and nodded. It was a decade ago. The feud between the Hyugas continued, and members of this village as well. They killed each other and the Baron also. But there was a girl that survived. Niji growled. Oh God. Please don't kill me. Oh? Where is she? He asked slowly. I took care of her. She's somewhere in the house. Please, I beg of you, go ahead and kill me but not my wife and Hinata please. So suddenly you're a saint, Niji smirked and shrugged. Sorry old man, now that you've seen me I can't allow you to live. Silently, he cursed his soft spot. This wasn't the man that caused him his eternal damnation. It was a Hyuga of the head family. A man with blonde-looking hair and green eyes certainly isn't a Hyuga, damn. Niji pulled the knife away from his throat. Tell me where the remaining survivor of the family is, and I will spare you and your wife. I can't. You can't or you won't? Just say it. I can't allow you to kill her, and I won't let you. Niji growled in frustration. This old man contradicted himself more than Shikamaru did. He didn't want to die and yet he'd risk his life for his wife and his foster child. He won't tell where his child was but he can't either. But he doesn't want to lose his life if he did so. It's decided. Someone is going to die. Look you old fart, just tell me one thing, is she from the head family, or from the branch? She's from the head, Niji smirked. Someone is definitely going to die tonight. Naruto was hungry, very hungry. His stomach hadn't stopped growling and he hadn't fed for a good 3 days. Big accomplishment for him. Inwardly, he gave himself a pat on the back. However, his need for blood was at its max tonight. A thought came to his mind. Naruto grinned evilly. That Hyuga girl he met a few days ago was interesting. There was a problem. He let her live. He felt guilty for killing her husband. But she didn't mind, and she was brave, so he allowed her to live. And now what was he going to do? He broke the pact the 4 of them made. If any mortal saw them, that mortal shall die by the next full moon. Well, Niji has a mortal and he didn't kill her. Why do I have to? This is unfair. He scratched the back of his head irritably. I swear I have fleas. That damn Kyubi. Look what you've done, he muttered mostly to himself. She seemed nice enough, but looks are deceiving. She probably ran to everyone in the village and announced that vampires were present, and stirred up panic and chaos. Well, that just ruined Niji's plan for revenge. But not for him. He rubbed his hands together evilly. Hopefully it didn't go too far like it did in Konoha. He sighed. Might as well take care of the problem now. Right. Nice and brave or not, Hinata would have to go. Naruto rolled his eyes and took off. Killing wasn't his forte. Sakura browsed through the house, exploring for a little while. Sasuke went off somewhere, leaving her to do whatever she felt. She found herself in the library. She always loved reading. When looking upon the shelf she found some strange books. Whatever they were, they looked odd. Well, that was one way to put it. Something caught her eye. Sakura pulled out one book and saw the cover. Come Paradise Vol. 1. Curious, she opened it to a random page and read. He grabbed dash. Sakura immediately closed the book and shut her eyes, cringing. Is this what they read? She gulped and daintily placed the book back in its place, noticing that these Come Paradise books lined the entire shelf, and then some. Deciding to avoid that particular book altogether, she walked to the other side of the library, studying the other collections of books around. She smiled triumphantly when she finally found something that looked interesting. She began to walk toward a nearby chair, until a breeze from an open window blew in. Her head snapped up and she turned toward the window. Her face lit up. Wow, a full moon, it's so beautiful, she whispered dreamily. Suddenly, Sakura felt a chill run down her spine. She instantly knew who it was. Sasuke. He appeared behind her, locking one arm around her waist, the other pushing her hair out of the way, exposing her neck. Sasuke-kun, you're back so soon? He didn't answer her question. She kept her eyes on the moon, trying to distract herself from him. Sakura, he whispered hoarsely into her ear. She could feel him smiling. Do you know what today is? She nodded slowly. Of course she knew what today was. I've waited a long time for it. She stiffened slightly. He moved down to her neck, allowing the tip of his fangs to touch it. She shivered. What did that mean? You'll know everything soon enough, she gulped. Sasuke brought both of his hands up, running them through her hair. Her knees turned to jelly. She quivered and closed her eyes. Sasuke-kun, what are you doing? He didn't answer. Instead, his fangs bit down slightly. She whimpered. He pulled himself away from her exposed neck. What are you doing in here? He asked suddenly. She smiled. I was going to read, I guess. What are libraries for, right? He nodded. I have a question though. What's with these Come Paradise novels? He stiffened and coughed. They were here when we moved in. Nice excuse, Sasuke thought to himself sarcastically. Sakura seemed unconvinced. Anyway, where did you go? He shrugged. The two stood together, looking at the full moon. Sakura, he whispered into her ear. Sasuke's arms tightened around her waist. He brushed her hair away. HM? He smirked. Happy birthday, she smiled. In one swift moment, before she could react or say anything, he plunged his fangs down her neck. Sakura stiffened and gasped. She found herself paralyzed. The blood was flowing backwards. She let out a small strangled cry. The life was being drained from her body. She was beginning to feel weak. Everything was going so fast. So, this is how it feels. She closed her eyes. It feels so good soon. Her hands dropped to her sides. She dropped the book she was holding. Her body slumped over. Sasuke caught her petite form and settled onto the carpeted floor. With holding her in his lap, he couldn't help but smile. Even if it was a half, his beloved would be his again. He cradled Sakura's barely conscious head and placed her mouth over this throat. Sakura. He forcefully plunged her barely developed fangs in, making her drink from him. It sent shockwaves throughout his body. You're mine again. His snake eyes snapped open. A vampire was born tonight, Orochimaru's sire. A lower vampire addressed him. What? 2 dead bodies were found in Konoha, and? Oh, how he dreaded these types of messengers. They never got to the point. None of us did it, sir. This is my concern. How? He half growled. Get to the goddamn point. We believe one of the other 4 might have done it. The victims were the harunos, sir. Only the eldest daughter is missing. Orochimaru laughed. He wasn't stupid. He knew who it was already. It didn't surprise him one bit. He, of course, didn't plan on it. But a different plan was already sprouting in his mind. This was a big advantage for him. Sasuke's a fool. Now, I know I taught him better than that, he muttered under his breath. So, they were still here all along. Finally, after almost a century, his kin will come back to him. They let themselves get distracted. And they thought they could lay low. Idiots, as always. They could never fool Orochimaru, their king, their father, their ruler. His laughter became louder. As sire? He stopped his laughing and glared irritably at the pathetic moron in front of him. Leave my sight, Orochimaru commanded sophisticatedly. The messenger did so quickly, tripping over his own feet in fear. The king smirked. He knew someone who would be very interested in this bit of news. Someone who got to his very nerve and core and still remained on his good side. Someone he couldn't trust, but entrust with any task he proposed. Uchiha Itachi. Let go of me. Shikamaru gave a strangled yell. Ino was having difficulties controlling her temper, and took it out on his poor shirt. How dare he? Why that little dash? She growled as she wrangled it around. Ino! Let go of my shirt! Shikamaru yelled desperately as he tried to get out of her tough grip. She blinked a couple of times before she realized Shikamaru's shirt had about 8 different holes in it. Oh, she let out a small nervous laugh. Gomen, Shikamaru. She let go of it and smoothed it out with her hands. Don't glare so much. It wasn't all that great anyway. He narrowed his eyes at her. You'll get over it. She patted his cheek. He sighed. I hate you for doing this, he said under his breath. Pardon? He shook his head. Ino laughed elegantly. A sudden chill ran down her spine. There it was again. She turned her head towards Sasuke's room, which was right across from Shikamaru's. Shika. What is Sasuke-kun doing? I haven't seen hide or hair of that guy anywhere. And why is his room always locked up? Shikamaru hung his lead low and took a deep breath. You should know. He's mourning and he needs some comfort? She took a stab at it. He shook his head. That Uchiha has a wife. I thought you knew. He grinned evilly. He's probably celebrating. Something dawned on him. That means, crap, I'm the closest to him. They'd better not be loud or dash. Ino grabbed his collar, her eyes burning. What the hell do you mean celebrating, and since when did she become his wife officially? Their current conversation was cut off when Sasuke just happened to be walking by, carrying an unconscious Sakura to his room. They both turned their gazes toward him, slowly. Sasuke gave a sharp glare at the two and walked into his own room, ignoring everything they'd said. Shikamaru sighed. You didn't feel it? Not too long ago, Sasuke just made her his official bride. He placed a hand under his chin. Ino's blue eyes widened. You barely missed him, Ino, Shikamaru sneered. Like that matters, Ino said dully, crossing her arms and sitting down on his bed. She clenched the bed sheets. Damn it, she sighed. I wonder if Sakura even remembers me. Still going to go after him, huh? He raised an eyebrow at her. She nodded with a smile. Niji ran throughout the entire Hyuga mansion and still he couldn't find where that girl was located. He let out a frustrated sigh. That old man probably lied to save himself. He shook his head. No matter. He's dead anyway. He continued to run until he spotted a door with the words Hinata on it. He smacked his forehead. You're slipping, Niji. His fists clenched, and he opened the door, revealing absolutely nothing. There was a bed in the corner, a desk, a closet, a dresser, everything one would need for a basic bedroom. But there was no one here. He punched a nearby wall. You'd think this girl would grow up to be a rich, spoiled little brat. He expected dolls, hairpins, kimonos, but nothing of that sort was around. His blank eyes scanned the room. Maybe she heard me and dash. No, I would have been stabbed by now. He rolled his eyes. A breeze flew in from an open window. His face lit up. So that's where you are. With skills that would make a cat jealous, he climbed out of the window stealthily. Now he had no idea where to go. He looked around, searching for any bed sheets she might have sneaked out with. Nothing. So that means, he took a giant leap up onto the roof. To his pleasure, a small petite form was laying peacefully there. A rude awakening is in order. He approached the girl. Dark hair. But what about the eyes? He bent down and decided to slap her awake. But as soon as he pulled the hand out, her own grabbed his. Hinata snapped her eyes open. Definitely a Hyuga. His eye twitched. It looks like Niji had finally found his victim. Naruto sighed as he walked into Byakugan village. Right or left? Do the Hyugas have any guards? This is no fun. His eyes scanned the lush area as he walked around the mansion lazily and noticeably. His nose picked up a familiar scent. Blood? He ran toward the source, allowing the smell to lead him. He rounded the corner and opened a door, revealing two bloody corpses, only piled over the other. Their throats were sliced. He gulped. This must have been the Baron Niji was so desperate to kill. He approached the two, poking the man slightly. Well, the blood's still fresh. A wheeze of air came out from the dead woman below him. Naruto cringed. He curtly spun his heel and walked the opposite direction. I hate corpses. Strange. He froze dead in his tracks. Something was wrong, very wrong. Niji dash. He cursed and ran top speed to where his comrade was. Sure enough, there he was, on the roof fighting with that one Hyuga girl. Niji. What are you doing? Naruto questioned angrily. Niji didn't respond, but Hinata was distracted by his sudden outburst and stopped her attack, which allowed Niji to make a clean punch under her jaw. The girl flew back a few feet and scraped her back on the hard deck of the roof. She let out a small strangled cry. Naruto approached them, disbelief in his eyes. Niji. You just hit a girl. The other man shrugged. That's against the rules, you know. Stay out of this, Naruto, he commanded lowly. I can't do that. I dash. Naruto stopped his sentence. What right did he have to stop them? Oh yeah, look Niji, this is pointless. The Baron is dead. Why are you even bothering with this girl? The other vampire growled. You can just go home, and I'll dash. Why don't you go home and quit interfering? Niji snapped at him. Naruto kept his mouth shut, but his angry eyes remained on the defiant being in front of him. Hinata was able to pick herself up in time to launch herself at Niji. She hit him right in the face. However, Niji countered by thrusting his palm into her abdomen, and then kicked her chest. Blood spewed from her mouth, as she was thrown back again. What was that? She struggled to get back on her feet, but she couldn't. Something was wrong with her body. A sudden churn in her confirmed that. Hinata placed a hand over her heart. She could feel it beating irregularly. Her pearl eyes widened as her body fell forward and more blood fell from her mouth. She began to cough uncontrollably. Damn it, what are you doing? You're going to kill her! Naruto yelled at him. Niji raised an eyebrow at him. Realization hit the blonde vampire. Wait, what? No! Niji, why you can't? She never did anything to you. It's because of her and her sad excuse for a family that I became what I am. He snapped angrily and strode toward Hinata, grabbing her hair. Do you see? Do you? This is what happened to me, little girl. This is what I became because of you and your family. I became this inhumane, eternally damned creature who had to live on human blood for a whole century. All because your family couldn't afford to sacrifice a member from the head. I had to become Orochimaru's. Hinata's eyes remained hard and unmoved. That's not true. He can't be, she gasped out. Niji's angry eyes remained on her. Hinata's eyes widened in utter shock and surprise. He's telling the truth? Do you think I'm lying? he said through clenched teeth. She looked away. So that means, everything I've been told up until now was a lie? She felt like crying, but she couldn't. Up till now, the entire village had been lying to her about the entire Hyuga incident, claiming Niji was kidnapped. So, the branch started the fight with the head family because Niji was given away to Orochimaru. How could they? How could they do that? Disbelief and shock was apparent in her eyes. Naruto watched painfully from the side. He felt bad, and he couldn't do anything to help her. He could see Niji was desperately trying to control his temper, and became calm again. While Hinata looked as if she were about to cry, his fists clenched. Stop. He yelled at the other vampire. You're going too far. Niji's blank gaze snapped toward Naruto. He growled frustratingly. Niji, it was the head family. But it wasn't completely her fault. She doesn't even know the whole story. You can't hold her accountable for everything that's happened to you. Niji let go of Hinata and strode over to Naruto. He punched him in the face. The blonde looked at him in shock. He snarled, Damn it, Niji. Quit being so stubborn, he retaliated. The two began to exchange punches and kicks, until Niji finally knocked Naruto down. He stood over him triumphantly. You can't save her, you know. Don't try to stop me. He turned his back on Naruto. She's mine to kill, the blonde spat. Niji stiffened. That's what this is about. You wanted to kill her? You're lying. Naruto thought about it for a while. You can't kill people, Naruto. You hate it. Even if you do it all the time to feed, you're weak. He said it. The two words Naruto absolutely dreaded. And he knew it too. He never admitted openly that he hated killing. But who said he had to like it, right? Being unable to kill doesn't make you weak, does it? His expression darkened. Hinata continued to try and pick herself up, but was failing miserably. Even though she was struggling, she couldn't help but overhear the two, with the way they were shouting. The whole village was probably awake. That blonde vampire definitely saved her. For the time being anyway. What that Niji guy was saying to him hit a chord in her also. Her father gave up training her long ago. Because she was a failure to any of the Hyuga techniques, she was always put down because she'd hold back from her opponent. She took the liberty upon herself to train, but apparently, that didn't do much for her either. Then again, she didn't expect to fight the Hyuga prodigy. That thought irritated her. How can he look down on people like that? She closed her eyes. So, his name is Naruto, she confirmed. Whatever was happening between the two didn't matter to her. She just wanted to let the Naruto know that he's not weak, that he shouldn't care about what Niji was saying. But Naruto had already picked himself up, his fist clenched, and his jaw tightened. I'm not weak, that reason's not good enough. What do you know? I know like it matters. You're the one being weak, Niji. Just swallow your pride. Quit blaming other people. He turned the conversation around. Damn you, Naruto, Niji snarled. He doesn't know what he's talking about, he kept convincing himself. Well, see it this way, you blamed the head family for what you became, but it wasn't their fault. You're a vampire. Orochimaru did it, Naruto stated. You still think I don't know what I'm talking about? His blank eyes widened. You forget I can read thoughts a lot too. The head family thought you would be able to escape from his clutches. They trusted you. And then there's Tenten. Niji immediately stiffened up. You blame her for your rash actions. And now you're blaming me for ruining everything because I'm depriving you of your revenge. Naruto smirked a bit. Niji looked down at his hands, and clenched his fist tightly. I've been blaming others because I couldn't accept what I was, what I became. It was all Orochimaru. Is he right? A grin spread on Naruto's face. Niji raised his head to meet with Naruto's and gave an unreadable look. The blonde nodded as if he understood Niji's expression. The dark-haired vampire growled. Naruto, you're going to pay dearly for this later, he ground out through clenched teeth. Niji swiftly turned and walked away. Stubborn ass, Naruto muttered when he was gone. Hinata's cough became louder and even worse. Naruto immediately ran to the girl's side. Niji instantly forgotten. Hey, hey! He yelled at her. Her eyes fluttered. She looked up at him as he picked up her head and placed it on the crook of his neck. You, he stated. Hinata, am I right? He grinned his signature fox grin. I remembered something. She let out another cough. Naruto panicked. Okay, if I don't save this girl soon she's going to die. Darn it, he snapped his fingers. Hinata let out another cough. Whoa. Okay. He looked around to see if there was anyone that could help them. This is bad. Naruto wanted to rip all his hair out. He looked down at her. She doesn't deserve to die. She can't die. He was shaking with anxiousness. I need to help her. He blinked a couple of times and realized, she's bleeding internally, and oh! He yelled dramatically. She gave him a weird, almost amused look. He looked down at her apologetically. There's one way to save her. But is she worth it? As he debated with himself, Hinata felt an overwhelming, sickening feeling in her chest. It hurt. A lot. She clutched it painfully and let out a scream. Naruto snapped out of his reverie and looked down at her. Oh, save her, Naruto. An inner voice whispered. Just leave her. Another one said, save her. She doesn't deserve to die. Help her. The other voice countered. No. Don't do it, Naruto. Don't burden yourself. So it went back and forth. Save her. Hurry, the first one yelled. It'll piss Neji off. The second one warned. Naruto blinked a couple of times. A slow grin spread on his face. I lived to piss Neji off. It was decided. I'm sorry, Missy. Naruto looked down at her apologetically. But this is the only way I can save you. You'll have to come with me after this. You just can't die. I dash. He cut himself off. She gave him a questioning look. After this, you'll be. He cut himself off again. Mine. You can leave later if you want, but geez. I'm sorry. This might sting a bit, he said shakily. He ran a hand through his hair. Here goes. Hinata's eyes widened into large pearl orbs. Is he going to dash? Her train of thought was abruptly cut off when Naruto, unsteadily, plunged his fangs into her neck. Well, at least he got his meal. Itachi, Orochimaru addressed the other vampire, who was currently residing in an old abandoned church. His red Sharingan eyes snapped open, but he stayed in his place. What do you want? His cool demeanor was making Orochimaru mad. Usually, when another vampire saw him, they'd cower in fear. He hated feeling inferior. Orochimaru opened his mouth to speak, but if it's about Sasuke and his whore, I could care less. The kind raised his eyebrow. I thought you'd be interested in this little piece of information. What Sasuke does is none of my concern, he said flatly. I thought you wanted him to become stronger. What does that have to do with anything? Get to the point, Orochimaru. Itachi narrowed his eyes at the pale form in front of him. Orochimaru, on the other hand, was losing his cool, calm expression. He was never a man to take orders very well. You want your kin back, don't you? How fatherly, Itachi mocked the other vampire. Orochimaru growled and launched a punch at Itachi. It made contact with his cheek, but he remained calm and collected. As Orochimaru pulled away, Itachi grabbed his wrist and twisted it. The king let out a strangled yell. Itachi twisted it even more, and heard a satisfying snap. He let go. Orochimaru took a few steps back, holding his limp wrist. He snapped it back in place, growling, Damn you, Itachi, you're becoming rash, my king. Itachi scorned. His eyes remained on the other being. You want me to go do your dirty work, right? Defeat those 4 traitors and bring them back to you. Use Sasuke's whore to lure him. Is that right? He questioned knowledgeably. Orochimaru nodded with a scowl on his face. I have one request. Orochimaru's head snapped up. No, he stated simply. Selfish as always. But if you don't agree, I just won't do it. Threats will get you nowhere. Itachi, you work for me, and I see no pay in it. Itachi retorted, I do your dirty work, but I see no reward in it anywhere. I do it for thrill, and not for you. I will get my demands. The king swallowed. So be it, he snarled. What do you want? Naruto and Sasuke's whore. Orochimaru's eyes widened. The girl you can have, but no, you can't have Naruto. He has the dash. That is precisely why I want him in my clutches. Besides, he'd be better suited in mine than yours. You already said dash. Fine. Anything else? Orochimaru questioned sharply. Kakashi, he stated simply. The king blinked a couple of times. He's still alive. You didn't kill him. Even if that's so, that is definitely a demand I can't give. You locked him away in a dungeon for almost a century. What use is he to you? Some toy? Are you implying something? Orochimaru fumed. You think like a pervert. I wasn't thinking anything. You're the one who said it. Or perhaps I am implying something. Itachi placed a hand under his chin. So, I want Naruto and Kakashi and the bitch. If you don't give, you won't receive. So you're Santa now? A low growl sounded from Itachi. Fine. His Sharingan eyes glinted in the moonlight. But you remember, Sasuke, Neji, and Shikamaru returned to me. He nodded and waved his hand dismissingly. Orochimaru scowled. One day, Itachi, his fists clenched, you'll get what's coming to you. You best be watching your back. I don't think so, Orochimaru, you're the one who should watch your back, someone might stick something through it. Itachi sneered at him. The king stiffened. Sakura, she blinked a couple of times and opened her eyes. What happened? She looked down at her hands, nothing out of the ordinary. So why do I feel so? She ran her hands through her hair, down her sides, and patted her rump a few times. Sakura, Sasuke stated fondly as she explored herself. She was just too darn amusing sometimes. Her head snapped up as she looked at him strangely. She gave a warm smile. Who are you? Sasuke almost fell over. No, she should have gotten her memory back by now. He gulped, fearing the worst. Is something wrong? She asked curiously. He looked away uncomfortably. His anger was setting in. She giggled. Don't look so mortified, Sasuke-kun. He stiffened, but immediately relaxed. You know I could never forget. He growled. Don't do that, Sakura. She let out a laugh. You could never take a joke. It wasn't all that funny, he muttered and walked toward her. He wrapped his arms around her waist and nuzzled her neck. She wrapped her arms around him. I miss you, my love, she whispered into his hair. He let out what seemed like a strangled cough. She took his head and raised it so that she could see straight into his eyes. She gasped, Sasuke-kun, you look so different. He gave her a questioning look. You're more pale than usual. What's wrong? Have you been eating right? She cupped his face into her hands. You're so cold. He took her hand. You're my wife, not my mother. Do you remember everything? He changed the subject. It looks like she doesn't even know she's a vampire, he sighed. Her brows crinkled in frustration. Everything's blurred. I really don't know. How did I get here? Images from her past flashed before her eyes. She clutched her head. A shadowed figure appeared. He grabbed her by the hair. Everything was so fast. He was beating her to the ground, then took a knife and sliced her. She could barely feel anything except for the long lazy streams of blood flow. He growled when she wouldn't make a peep and slammed her against the wall. An evil smile graced his features as he raped her. That's when she screamed. He dropped her onto the floor. She looked psychotic, clutching the remains of her clothing to her naked body. Gasping desperately for air, he laughed, loudly, triumphantly, and tauntingly. You will die tonight, he murmured into her ear seductively. She almost gagged. There was nothing seductive about that statement. She clutched her abdomen lovingly and wept. One of Stranger's hands stroked her cheek, while the other continued to explore her body. She flinched and growled frustratingly, as his hand traced over her lips. She bit him. He grabbed her by her hair and pinned her against the wall. She fought against him, but it was of no use. You stupid bitch. You'll regret that. His fangs plunged into her neck. She refused to scream. He bit harder. She squirmed. Sasuke-kun, she shut her eyes tightly. Tears fell from her eyes as this monster drained the life out of her body. His torn image appeared before her. Sakura, he whispered. She eventually succumbed to the darkness and allowed death to take her. Her green eyes snapped open. It was him, she choked, but found she couldn't cry. Disbelievingly, she placed a hand on her cheek to see. No moisture. Sasuke gave her a perplexed look. Who's this man she's talking about? Sakura. I remembered. This isn't right. She looked at him. This isn't right. I'm supposed to be dead. You are, he confirmed simply. She gazed at him curiously. How is that possible? I can't be can I? She looked frightened. Sasuke-kun. I can't, she began to shake. Her hands grasped the bed sheets. Sasuke wrapped his arms around her. It's true, stop convincing yourself, Sakura. Just accept it. You're a vampire now, he stated bluntly. But that just is this where you've been all along? She pulled away from him. That night he nodded and cupped her cheeks with his hands. She looked away. I became what killed me. And what took you? She shook her head. I don't want that, Sasuke-kun. It's not supposed to turn out this way. She closed her eyes. I don't want that. This is a mistake. Sasuke snarled. Did she want to be with him or not? You would have been gone forever, Sakura. Are you saying this was a mistake? I made you my bride again. Her head snapped up. She looked at him surprisingly. Are you saying it was a mistake to find you? That it was wrong to take you away from the hell you were reborn into? Are you saying being reborn for me was a fault? Are you? He was having difficulty controlling his temper. And no, Sasuke-kun, I just Then don't say anything. Fate took you away from me and it's not going to again. I made you a part of me, Sakura. Accept it. You're a vampire. His calm returned. She gave a small, uncomfortable nod. It'll take time. But I guess you're right, I have to accept it. She shook her head. No, Sasuke-kun, it wasn't a mistake. I didn't mean to dash. She swallowed and placed a hand where he bit her. There were faint marks, but nothing too bad. It's real then? We're together again. I should be grateful, yet she still had her doubts. She placed her arms around his neck, pulling him closer to her. It feels wrong, and yet so right. Why did things have to turn out this way? She thought painfully. He responded and wrapped his arms around her petite form. Love, you do seem a bit more ill than usual. She changed the subject. Sasuke cut her off. It's nothing. Don't concern yourself with it, he commanded. Sakura knew him the best. She always knew when there was something wrong with him, just like he did her. She decided to keep her mouth shut, but gave nod and understanding. He grasped her hand and planted a kiss on her palm. He did miss her a lot more than he thought, though he never admitted out loud. This brought back memories for Sakura. She found herself entranced by this new, more mysterious version of Sasuke. But she was still pained over the fact that this is how he'd been living for the past years. Just waiting for her. Perhaps their current state was better. Maybe it was for the best. At least now, they had an eternity. Realization hit her as a smile graced her features. I really did miss you. I'm glad you brought me back. She pressed herself closer to him, into his neck, inhaling his unique scent. Inwardly she still doubted herself, and her situation. He had to smile, or half-smile. He tucked a strand of her pink hair behind her ear, and placed his hand under her chin. Her green eyes were the same. Her attitude was the same. Her memories were back. An odd feeling developed inside him. Happiness? But he saw something else in her eyes. Fear? Whatever it was, something was wrong with her. Beloved, he whispered. Her eyes widened. Sasuke never said things like that, ever. Well, he did once. And that was when her best friend died and he tried to comfort her. She felt like crying in happiness, though her body wouldn't allow her to do so. A slight smirk graced his features as he leaned down and captured her lips with his. The things I do for her. Where have you been? Tintin asked curiously as Neji walked in. He punched the wall nearest to him and growled frustratingly. Well, there's blood all over you. I'm assuming you got your target. But judging from your current mood, I'd say you weren't satisfied, or something went wrong. How does she do that? Neji though furiously. You're not helping at all, he stated. I know, I try my best, she beamed happily, though she was still tied up. Her cheerful mood was never broken. It was a mystery even to Neji. He rolled his eyes. You're not tired yet? He raised an eyebrow. Tired of what? She chirped. Being tied up. Her face darkened. Of course I'm tired. You just haven't untied me. And I guess you're treating me all right. I'm not one to complain about it. She shrugged. He walked to her side and loosened her bonds. Ah, thank you so much. Why don't you just untie me? She asked sweetly. Inwardly, she wanted to stab him multiple times. Because secretly you want to kill me. She blinked. How'd he know? I can't have that now, can I? She's a fiery one. He kept his cool. Not like I can anyway. She shot back. He raised an eyebrow. Can I make a deal or something? You have no reason to keep me here and dash. Oh, come on. Would you please untie me? He sighed. Fine. But did you try anything funny? Dash, he warned. I know. I've been on the receiving end of this threat multiple times. She grinned mischievously. He untied her. Ah, thank you so much. She rubbed her bleeding wrists. He gave her an almost concerned look. Guess I went a little too far. Ow, she hissed. Blood dripped down her fingers as she held one of her wrists painfully. He found himself entranced by the sight. Do you have a bandage or something? He shook his head slowly. His eyes were still on her blood. She lifted her hand to her lips and licked the red substance away. The room was suddenly feeling hot. He found himself moving closer to her. Tenten winced. Neji grabbed her wrist, eyeing it hungrily. She let out a startled yelp as he bent down and licked it. She began to pull away, but his grip was firm. Ow, she said to distract him. He was still at it. Ow, she emphasized. Ow, he stopped licking, but his lips remained on her wrist. You haven't fed for quite a few days, have you? She asked amusingly. Shut up, he growled, and licked again as more blood seeped through. It feels like a dog, he blinked. It tickles too. He pulled away. Finally, I thought you'd never dash. Her wrist remained in his hand. He picked it up and bit down on it slightly, drawing a little bit more blood. Ow, that hurts, you know. Punishment, he stated simply. Her eye twitched. You keep me here, you tie me up, you take my target, you sniff me. And now you're biting me, buddy. I think you're taking it a little far. Neji had to smirk. So why do you keep me here? Should I tell her the truth? He leaned down until he was almost nose to nose with her. You really want to know? She nodded nervously and gulped. He moved closer until his lips were barely pressed against her. Tenten's eyes widened. He's seducing me again. She had that familiar overwhelming desire build up within her. She couldn't help it. Her eyes landed on his lips, which were a mere millimeter away, a little closer. She felt her body move on its own accord and lean in toward them. Unfortunately, as soon as she made little contact, he pulled away. She let out a small whimper, and a growl in frustration. Something occurred to her. She blinked a couple of times. Hold it, wait, did you just sniff me? She stuttered, gah. She had an absolutely horrified look on her face. Relax, I didn't sniff you, he said with a hint of enjoyment in his voice. Her expression got calm again. So then, why do you keep me here? You intrigue me, and you're amusing. He started toward the door. She smacked her forehead. That's the best excuse you can come up with? He heard her scream angrily as he shut the door. He had a genuine smile on his face. It was the first time he really smiled in years. Hinata awoke with a start. She ran a hand through her hair as she realized what happened. He was right next to her, his warm breath on her hand. He was asleep. She turned her head toward the blonde sleeping on her bedside. She wanted to cry. She became something she absolutely dreaded, and it was his entire fault. Everything was his fault. She pulled her hand out from under him, which caused him to wake. Naruto blinked a couple of times and looked up, only to find his eyes meeting with a pair of angry pearl eyes. Oh, she looks pissed, hey. He laughed nervously and waved. Her glare intensified. I'd rather die than become what you just made me. She yelled angrily and smacked him over the head. Ow, I thought you were supposed to be shy. I'm not shy when I'm angry. She gave him a quizzical look. How'd you come to that conclusion? He shrugged and smiled cheekily. She growled. It's all your fault. Now, I have to drink blood and she couldn't go on. Her voice got caught. Well, it's not bad once you're used to it, I promise. He reasoned with her. I thought you hated killing. She snapped. Well, I do. How'd you come to that conclusion? She looked away. He blinked. Oh yeah. Never mind, he grumbled. So how are you feeling? Hinata's eyes traveled all over the room. A glint of something silver caught her attention. She turned to the bedside and found a small knife in plain sight. I hate what I am. And I hate what I've become. I can hey. Naruto's voice snapped her out of it. You aren't going to Don't do anything crazy now. I wasted blood for you, he warned. She glared at him and grabbed the knife. He grabbed it too. They began to pull and tug back and forth. Hinata got frustrated and bit his hand. Naruto let out a surprised yelp and pulled away. A small smile graced her features. This ends here and now. Thank you for saving my life. But it was hardly worth it. A pained look crossed her features. I'd rather not live like this. She raised the knife to her chest. Hey! Don't! Naruto yelled and reached for her. But it was too late. She stabbed herself through the chest. He smacked his forehead. Shit, I can't see anything. Ino hissed as she looked through the keyhole. Oh! He's she gasped. He kissed her. Get away from the door, Ino. Shikamaru grumbled from his room. He was lying lazily on the bed. Oh my god, did she just touch him where I thought she touched him? No, but she's touching something. This is so unfair. She snarled. Of course it's fair, they're married, and doing something married couples do. Get away from the damn door before I drag you away. Ino turned around and glared at him. Oh, shut up, Shikamaru. She resumed her peeking. I swear his hands were. She froze. For a moment, she thought Sasuke's eye met with hers. He was glaring at her. She shook her head. He's too distracted. She heard Sakura whisper something in his ear, which caused him to turn his attention toward her again. Ino got away from the door and went back to Shikamaru's room. I'm being paranoid. A scream came from Sasuke's room, followed by a loud bang and an angry shriek from Sakura. Shikamaru winced. He forgot she was a virgin, didn't he? He sighed. What the hell was that? Ino fumed angrily and looked through the keyhole again. Her eye twitched. I can't believe they oh my god. Lucky little Shikamaru was suddenly behind her. He grasped her hand and dragged her back into his room, locking the door behind them. Damn it, Ino, I said get away from the door. Sasuke can hear almost anything that's within a 6-mile radius. He could hear the both of us right now if he wanted. but he could certainly hear you. Ino blinked. Well then, his ears must be broken from that scream Sakura just made. I can't believe her. She glared at the door. Just one more dash. Before Shikamaru could stop her, she opened his door and ran to look through the keyhole again, this time they're kissing rather sloppily. Shikamaru gave her a blank stare. Oh dear. I've never seen Sakura like that before. He just bit her. Well, that's going to leave a mark in the morning, she cringed. He just grabbed her dash. Shikamaru sighed. I really don't want to know the details, Ino. As much as he hated what Ino was doing, he knew he couldn't stop her. His eyes were glued to something completely different, and it made him feel like a pervert. She had a nice backside, that's one advantage. On the other hand, Sasuke is going to slaughter me and feed me to dogs later for letting Ino stay here. What was I thinking? He banged his head against the wall. Oh wow, Sasuke's talented. Ino licked her lips. Shikamaru's eye twitched. Gasps followed from Ino as she observed the occupants in the other room. He began to feel extremely uneasy. Ino, give them some privacy. They deserve it, you know. She turned and gave him a sharp glare. It's not right. Just get away from the door. Her glare remained, but she did so and propped herself onto his bed with You're being ridiculous. He sat in front of her. She turned her head another direction and stuck her nose up in the air. Stop. You're acting like a 2-year-old. Her nose wrinkled, but she did nothing else. You deprived me, Shikamaru. He has a very nice body. She licked her lips. Your lust is sickening. She stuck her nose up again. And here's the 2-year-old act. Another humph sounded. Deja vu. There is nothing wrong with wanting to watch your love do something with someone else, she stated matter-of-factly. You're a pervert, Shikamaru stated simply. She gaped at him. An angry look crossed her features. She grabbed an antique sword hanging on his wall. He looked at her with wide eyes. Wait. I didn't mean it, Ino. But you have to understand, I mean, hey dash. She drove the sword through him and kicked him to the ground. Her eyes twinkled. Don't you call me a pervert. I wasn't the one checking out my friend's backside. He got up and glared at her, with the sword still hanging out of his chest. I'm not the one watching my friend do things with his wife. There's a difference. You're just stubborn, that's all. And I was not checking out your backside. She kicked him again. Stubborn bloody women. He fumed angrily from the ground. He jumped from roof to roof. His eyes scanned the wide area. No one. Itachi grumbled. He'd been searching for the location of the mansion Kakashi was living at. Unfortunately, he couldn't get very far without the silver-haired vampire. He ran a hand through his hair. As talented as he was, Itachi couldn't find the hideout right away. At this rate it might take months, hell even years, if I don't find a trace of them anywhere. He jumped to another rooftop. This is a pain in the ass.